across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good afternoon. Yeah, welcome to the Afternoon Empire. This is the home of common sense. Thank you to Julia. She's back tomorrow. Of course, we are talking about the missing 50 billion quid. Rachel Reeves under pressure to hike taxes immediately. Oh, thanks for that. Because of this big old black hole, which has doubled miraculously since she entered office, which was about half an hour ago. The Chancellor on course to miss key targets and spending promises as the nation's finances plunge deeper into the red. Listen. Are you willing to pay more tax to save the economy? I've got a funny feeling I know the answer to that, but it's a straightforward question. Would you be willing to pay a little bit more to get us back into the black, as it were? Also this afternoon, small boat migrants could dodge deportation to France under Prime Minister Keir Starmer's one in, one out returns deal by claiming human rights protections or saying they're under 18. Which many of them do. I'm only 14, despite an impressive beard and a body full of tats. And Bob Villan's controversial Glastonbury set live stream by the BBC sparked a surge in anti-Semitic incidents, hitting a 6-month high the following day, it's been revealed, as police continue to investigate the incident. More on that as well. Everything you need to know, all the breaking news right here on Talk. 0344 499 1000. I'm going to ask you to drop me a voice note on this as well, on that same number, 0344 499 1000. Are you willing to pay more tax to save the economy? What is your assessment of kind of where we are currently at and how the hell we get out of it? We know the problem, and these are the headlines. Taxes must rise this autumn if Rachel Reeves is to meet her self-imposed borrowing rules. This is according to the National Institute of Economic and Social Research. They don't mess around, these people. They understand what they're doing. It's recommended a moderate but sustained increase in taxes, including a reform of the council tax system to make up the shortfall. How much more can you... Here's the problem we have. If everything was tickety-boo, if life was rubbing along nicely, if you were earning a great wage and there was nothing controversial about doing your shopping. Do you know, I found myself today, this is the interesting one. I think this is quite contagious. A lot of people listening to this will, I'm sure, share this issue. It doesn't even matter if you can afford something. You are still shocked to the mere idea that certain things cost certain prices, and you find, and also why you don't want to, even if you can afford something, you don't want to waste money. It doesn't make you a tight old git because you look at dishwasher tablets, which was exactly what I was doing this morning, realising the fairy people wanted £16 a bag of 50 tablets or whatever it was. I'm thinking, really? How did we get to that stage? I swear this was £6 a couple of years ago. And it's all of that. So if life wasn't so darn expensive, if everything was running along nicely, if your energy bills were not the kind of bills that could probably solve the debt of a small country in South America, you might go, OK, well, it's every now and again, it's a capitalist system. No one ever said it's a straight, smooth road. Once in a while, there's going to be bumps and there's going to be potholes, quite literally, in our case. So we get it. But that isn't the case. We are running on almost fumes at the moment in terms of our economy, in terms of household budgets, affordability, what you've got to fill up your car with, to buy a basket of groceries, just to pay for the basics like turning on a tap, everything through the flipping roof. How did an energy bill become £200 a month? Seriously. We're in that territory. Your council tax. And this, by the way, is not dependent always on living in a plush area. There's some places paying £500 a month for their council tax. That's more than many mortgages, for God's sake. And they're not exactly looking great either. So all the while that is going on, to be required to pay more is a massive ask. This think tank, which, by the way, is not political in that respect, says the government could raise revenue through changes to the scope of VAT, pensions allowances and prolonging the freeze in income tax thresholds, which is set to end anyway in 2028. So you just put more people into higher rates of tax. And you look at the taxation in this country, and again, I can't be the only person that, you know, obviously I work, as most of us do, in a freelance capacity, and you do your taxes, and it's great. You know, if you've had a good year, you think, OK, that's fair enough. I pay more taxes. But when you become aware of what is not allowed, or what you know, the thresholds and how they raise and how they go through you just start to think, what am I actually paying for? All of this is fine. Oh, by the way, I didn't even throw in things like hospital appointments and education. When Rachel Reeves became Chancellor, she set out 2 rules for government borrowing, which is the difference between public spending, of course, and income tax. The first rule was that day-to-day spending would be paid for with government revenue, which is, of course, your taxes. Borrowing can only be for investment. The second rule was that debt must be falling as a share of national income by the end of a 5-year period. And she repeatedly used that phrase. These rules are non-negotiable. So she's backed herself into a massive fiscal cul-de-sac, if you like. And I have no idea how she's going to get out of this. I mean, when they entered office, of course, they wanged on about this £22 billion black hole. Spoiler alert, they just made that figure up. And even when you start to just look at the surface of it, half of it was in unions getting pay rises. Nonetheless, here we are, not a year or so down the line, and it's doubled. In fact, it's more than double. We're looking at 50 billion. How is she going to do it? How is she going to achieve this? And what is your assessment of living in a very, very expensive country and getting less and less in return? So on that basis, are you willing to pay more tax to save the economy? I know it sounds like a stupid notion. Would I pay more tax to save what economy? We haven't got an economy. Falling apart. 0344 499 1000. Drop us a voice note there as well. Chloe Dobbs is with us, the political commentator, to chew through the big stories of the day, including this one, Chloe, which of course is massive. I mean, this is the rudder of everything that guides our life, the treasury, the people that have supposedly impressive degrees and the best economic brains, not just in Westminster, in the world, are meant to work in that place. They've got this stuff where they know stuff you and I could never know because they're so clever, their brains are so big, they have to have surgical procedures to keep them in their cranium. I mean, it's these are the people that are in charge and making it all happen. Rachel Reeves will have to raise taxes, looking at everything here, to fill the black hole. And it's worth, just before we start, Chloe, just having a little reminder of what Labour promised the United Kingdom. Have a listen to this.
All of our plans are fully costed and fully funded, and that means no tax rises for working people.
We're not going to be raising tax on working people.
We will not raise taxes on working people.
We're not putting up taxes on working people.
Labour government will not raise income tax, will not raise national insurance contributions and will not raise VAT.
We're not going to increase tax on working people, and that means
that Labour will not be putting up taxes on working people.
But no, we don't think that we should be raising taxes on working people.
There'll be no additional taxes on households under a Labour government.
let me be absolutely clear, we will not raise tax for working people.
Well, who came up with the working people bit? Because they obviously all got a memo, and they go, whenever you say this, what you've got to do is go, we're not raise taxes for working people. Well, where are they going to get it from, Chloe?
Well, they're going to have to raise taxes on...
It can't be for not working people, can it? I mean, you can't say to people, right, all the unemployed are going to pay more tax.
I mean, they really sort of set themselves up a trap by referring to working people before the general election, because that's very vague. Do you mean people who are considered working class, or do you mean people that go to work? And people that go to work may be freelance, they may be company directors. It's not the case that people who are business owners are all people making millions and millions. You've got plenty of people, say, running the local corner shop or the local independent
well, they're
pub
working people got
who
hit by a national insurance rise.
Exactly, and they've been hit with tax rises. So that was a total mess. And then they really, narrowed their options by saying we won't raise taxes on working people. We're essentially at least saying we won't raise income tax, because that's really limited Rachel Reeves's options if she needs to raise tax, and very clearly that is going to happen in the autumn. She's going to have to either break her fiscal rules that she's set for herself, which would be very embarrassing to do, or break that huge Labour promise, which, as we have seen in that brilliant compilation we've just played, was said over and over and over again, and you could argue helped them win that general election victory. They're going to have to break one of those two. Most likely income tax is going to go up, and that's going to be pretty bad for the Labour Party. I mean, their approval ratings and polling is poor enough as it is, but that's going to be a moment where it's going to be a tipping point where people are absolutely furious about lie after lie after lie, and this is just going to be the cherry on top for people.
Is it, because they would say it's not our fault, we've done nothing wrong here, you know, we've only been here a little while and we inherited this, you know, horrendous set of accounts and books, so we're still going to blame the Tories. They'll carry on saying that for a little while long. I don't know how long you're allowed to get away with that, but how do we address it? So they're not going to raise taxes. I mean, you sort of scratch, well, OK, what other options? I mean, you know, the government doesn't have any money, it only has our money. So how do they increase what they need to pay for what they've spent?
Well, I mean, they've got the option to either cut spending, which is not really going to be a viable option given there was such a huge rebellion over a plan to just cut $5 billion off the welfare bill, which is not a very big amount of money. So that's going to be pretty difficult to do when you've got all these rebellious backbenchers. Or they're going to have to raise income tax. And you've got various unions and very ideologically socialist people saying, oh, the solution is just, you know, a wealth tax, just do a quick big tax on the rich people. But I mean, already with the non-dom changes and whatnot, we are seeing loads of people leaving the country that are business owners who help grow the economy, and we're seeing that in that we are seeing businesses being shut down. We're seeing loads of people leaving. We're seeing growth forecasts often being downgraded. I know various different figures say different things, but I think it's clear that people leaving the country and people having big hikes in national insurance and whatnot that you've mentioned is causing businesses to shut down, leave, or reduce their output. And that means that we've got even less money coming into the coffers. So I don't think that some sort of wealth tax is going to work. I mean, one of the reasons why the Labour Party made those big promises before the general election to not raise taxes on working people is because they thought, oh, we'll just do a big hike in capital gains tax, we'll just tax the rich, and that will balance the books. But then as soon as Rachel Reeves got into power and the Treasury started running the numbers, they said, no, this isn't going to raise much money because people are going to move their money around, they're going to leave the country. And so she's been left in the situation. And she, you know, you ask the question, will they just blame the Tories? They might try, but we're not going to fall for it. She can, even if there was a supposed 22 billion black hole that she didn't know about, we've now got a 50 billion black hole, right? She keeps on creating these black holes by taxing people more, pushing more people out the country, causing market scares which make the cost of borrowing go up, which means we need more money for servicing our debt. It's a total mess. Complete and utter mess.
And it's very hard to speak to anyone who can even give a kind of educated guess at how you get out of it. That's the problem. You know, when we're going to speak to an economist in just a bit, very few say, don't worry, this is how you do it, because there is no don't worry about this.
Well, I think
there's only bad news coming our way.
I think unless you're very optimistic, I think we have to accept that income tax is most definitely going to go up in the autumn budget. Now, that doesn't solve all our problems for the long term. It may do in the short term. It may mean that she, at least on some forecasts, balances the books. But we're in this never-ending spiral, Ian, where we put up taxes to try and balance the books. Then the growth forecasts get downgraded because those tax rises mean that more businesses shut down, there's less growth in the economy, and so on, which then means the forecasts then later say, oh, you haven't got as much money coming in as expected. So then we raise taxes again, and the cycle goes on and on and on, and the economy is never going to grow. The only way that we're really, in the long run, going to get good money coming into the coffers is to start being in a position where we can actually get economic growth beyond 2.5%, and that seems to be impossible for us these days.
We're taking calls on that. Are you willing to pay more tax to save the economy? 0344 499 1000. Drop us a voice note on that if you want to bypass the queues. Let's move to this story. Chloe's still with us. Keir Starmer's migration deal lets migrants exploit human rights laws to block deportation, while Article 16 allows France to send migrants to the UK without sharing any information about them. That's where we're at. Sounds safe. Not. The Prime Minister put out a video yesterday on social media highlighting the deal. Let's have a listen to what Keir Starmer said.
For the very first time, migrants arriving via small boat will be detained and returned to France in short order. In exchange for every return, a different individual will be allowed to come here via a safe route, controlled and legal, subject to strict security checks and only open to those who have not tried to enter the UK illegally. This will show others trying to make the same journey that it will be in vain, and the jobs they've been promised in the UK will no longer exist because of the nationwide crackdown we're delivering on illegal working, which is on a completely unprecedented scale.
You see, you throw terms like unprecedented scale and, you know, as if this is some huge shift in policy. It's not really. And we know today, by the way, the Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philp, has been out on the channel himself this morning, highlighting exactly why the deal is already failing.
So the government announced yesterday they had a new deal with France supposed to stop boats crossing the channel. So I thought I'd come out here and see what's going on. I'm on the English Channel, probably about 7 or 8 miles off Calais. And behind me you can see a French warship, and just next to it is a dinghy full of illegal immigrants. The French making absolutely no attempt whatsoever to stop it. They've been shadowing it for the last 3 hours. It's about 2 hours from British waters. They're going to be arriving in the UK later on today. So quite clearly the government's claims to be fixing this with their new deal are not working. The evidence is right behind me.
So there it is, Chloe. This is day one, the first 24-hour period since this new deal came in. And there's the Shadow Home Secretary on the channel watching the French escort a boat out of French waters into British ones.
Well, Keir Starmer...
I mean, this is beyond satire, right?
I know. I mean, it is crazy that we've got Keir Starmer putting out all these videos saying how tough he is on migration. He can put the dramatic music over it, but it's not going to convince me that he's actually getting the situation sorted out. He should have made a deal where he tells the French and also Border Force to stop giving them an escort across. I mean, it is laughable what is happening, right? They use safety as an excuse for this. Oh, we need to make sure that they don't die across the channel, so we need to escort them along the way. And what Border Force do is worse, right? Because French will go alongside the dinghy, but as soon as it gets to the centre line of the channel, Border Force, they don't just go alongside them to Dover. They pick them up right in the centre of the channel. The boat only needs to make it halfway. And then they have another boat that comes to collect the empty dinghy, which Border Force, they have to lease that for £6,000 a day, this boat to just come and pick up the dinghies. I mean, it's crazy.
So great, if you own the boat that picks up the dinghy, you're doing all right.
If anyone's thinking of getting into a new job...
Should we go to Dragon's Den with this?
Yeah.
As the dinghy retrievers.
I mean, it is crazy how much money...
I'm Chloe, I'm Ian, and we'd like £100,000 in our dinghy retriever business, please.
Great idea. But, I mean, look, this deal is already running into problems, as you pointed out. I knew we were going to have all these human rights claims and whatnot. That is no surprise. Of course, migrants are going to be able to use ECHR rules and whatnot to try and challenge being deported. So the idea that people will be deported within a couple of weeks of arriving, they'll probably end up going to court over and over and over again, and then maybe a year later there's a small chance they'll be sent back to France. And I'm sorry, I don't trust the French. I mean, look what they have been doing. You know, they occasionally send us a video of them slashing a boat, but we know when they're not looking. They're taking bribes from the people smugglers. They're letting them all come across. We can't trust them. So why are we trusting them to send us, to pick who they're going to send our way? I mean, we're told it's going to be migrants who have family ties in the UK, but I'm sceptical that maybe they'll send us all the worst criminals. We will.
We're going to watch with interest. I'm just waiting for Keir Starmer to come out and go, "We did it. We did it." after 3 people are sent to Les Mieux or something in France, and that's as far as it gets. And a year down the line, nothing has changed.
And we don't have any details as to where exactly in France they are going to be sent, and the migrants that come here who are supposedly detained.
Yeah. Well, if people wouldn't give any details.
Where exactly are they going to go? I mean, we really don't know what's going on here, and I wouldn't be surprised if they haven't ironed out the details themselves, and Yvette Cooper's got no idea what the plan is with these migrants.
As Minan would have said, it's like a mad woman's breakfast of a deal. We will watch with interest. Who knows what one of those looks like. We've got more with Chloe in a couple of moments' time. More stories on the way, and of course, crucially, your comments. 0344 499 1000.
Marks and Sparks has apologised, but they haven't responded to any of the other things that have been coming up for absolutely years. For example, that they allow everybody to identify into whichever changing rooms they want. Women have been complaining about this directly. I have seen a letter that was written in 2017 about this, and the response was, we are inclusive, we are an inclusive retailer. I mean, this nonsense, we are excluding women who want to have a place to get changed in peace. So they've apologised on this, but they haven't actually answered questions about, do you have any male bra fitters who call themselves women?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Joanna in Salisbury says, pay more tax. I've been forced to pay compulsorily in for a pension for 50 years, and now they're trying to call it a benefit when I claim it next year and cut it. They have my pension money and want more tax to spend on migration, net zero, Lammy loose with the UK chequebook, MPs flying all over the world with all the perks, including Hoyle. All that when I can't afford to heat my house in the winter or even a holiday. I'm done with the lies. When £22 billion black hole becomes 50 billion, they did it. Sod off, says Joanna. Yeah, I think that's quite good. I think that's the line that Kemi should have in response to the Chancellor.
I mean, people
should quote. You know how politicians like to quote. I had a letter from my constituent Pam, and then you never know whether it's real.
I feel like Kemi's maybe a bit too serious
I
to
think
read that
that's
out.
the trouble.
But I mean, this is how ordinary people are feeling. They just feel like they've been taken for absolute mugs, and it would be okay to some degree if you saw, I'm paying this extra tax, and as a consequence, I can see a doctor quicker, the streets are safer. But it feels like we give this money and it just disappears. It goes in the bin, and we find out that the black hole is growing and getting even bigger.
100%. Let's look at this story. Now, this was written up first. I read this in the Telegraph this morning, that the undercover BBC reporter paid £1,200 to a people smuggler. And actually, I sort of revised my view on this. I thought, well, thank God somebody has managed to rumble what's going on here, because this is meant to be Keir Starmer's job to find these bad people, because he's going to smash the gangs. Don't know if you heard about that, Chloe. He's going to smash the gangs.
Really? I never heard
Yeah, apparently, yeah. Son of a toolmaker and all of that. BBC reporter pays £1,200 to a violent people smuggling gang to infiltrate their channel operation. There is footage of this, shows a gang member in Birmingham trousering £900 in cash for a spot on a migrant boat. And the gang linked to 12 migrant deaths using fake names, burner phones to outsmart French and UK police. Now, essentially, it's it would come out of a journalistic budget to facilitate this. Is it a vanity issue that is going on here with the BBC going, look, we've done this, or is this crucial stuff? Because we know that the only time I've seen of people smugglers being exposed has been by broadcasters.
That's the thing. This is a hard one, I think, because on the one hand, this is not just any channel. This is BBC, which is funded by licence fee payers, and we don't want to be funding criminality, right, and giving money to criminals, right? But then on the other hand, we crucially do need these gangs to be exposed. If these gangs are exposed, they're potentially going to get less business and less money in the long run, so you can look at it that way. And I do think that I don't think it's going to be a successful crackdown, but this attempt we're seeing to crack down on the gangs is, I think, in part because we've had a lot of journalists going out there and showing, for example, the boats leaving whilst the French police stand by as, as a counter to the few bits of footage we have come from the French, where they say, oh, look at us, we're slashing this boat, right? A lot of the truth has been exposed. We also had Keir Starmer, in that clip he's put out, talk about the big crackdown on illegal working. That's only come about because of The Sun and The Express going and doing great journalism and exposing all these Deliveroo and Uber Eats riders coming in and out of these hotels. So I think that I think it's really important that journalists do what they need to do to uncover this, but this is a difficult one. What I will say is that I think this is different to the very controversial Gaza documentary, where we had a Hamas family paid for this child narrator, because there in the documentary it wasn't
the son of a terrorist.
It wasn't clear who this kid was, and
Correct.
There was
that was just bad journalism.
There was a big risk of bias as a consequence, and an unrepresentative view of what's going on in Gaza without all the facts laid very clear. So that was more concerning to me.
The BBC have always kind of, whenever there's been any sort of investigation, whether it's about phones or whatever it is, it's always the print media that seem to get it in the neck. I worked at the BBC, and I can tell you, when it came to, having to pay a contact or whatever else, it was no different. It's just a form of journalism that you might... And my goodness, I've never seen the BBC sort of exposed for that, and neither do I think they should be. Sometimes, a journalist might have to buy someone a pint to put it very mildly, in order to to get some information or whatever it happens to be. I mean, it's kind of called journalism. There are sometimes expenses associated with that, and if you know someone who's going to give you some information that's going to be a genuinely good story, that's how it is. But the Beeb somehow play this sort of high and mighty, we don't do stuff like that, it's just those boys in Fleet Street who are up to no good, paying off XYZ. These were tips, things that journalists forever since the dawn of man have said, all right, I'll buy you a bite to eat in a nice hotel, but just tell me the bloody name of the actor who's been playing away from home, or whatever the story might be.
Yeah, exactly. If you think that the story is going to do more good than the harm of giving a bit of cash to
BBC are
someone.
no different, is my point.
Yeah, I mean, I interviewed a proper people smuggler on the coast of Lebanon, and I thought that was a great thing that we did. I have no idea what the agreement with was him. I wasn't the money man. Yeah. But I think that it was important that we did that and showed exactly what was going on and heard it from the horse's mouth.
You've been smuggled, in effect.
Yeah.
You've been on the boat.
Well, it was a simulation.
But you're still on a boat.
But we weren't aware it was a simulation until after we thought we were going to die.
Yeah, it was quite scary, wasn't it?
Oh my God, it was terrifying, yeah. My life flashed before my eyes.
That's the sort of stuff Noel Edmonds used to do on TV shows back in the 90s. And finally, this just a quick word on this. Anti-Semitic incidents hitting a 5-6-month high the day after the Bob Vylan performance at Glastonbury. Police said inquiries are still continuing on that. I'm really not surprised if the national broadcaster allows somebody to go on the telly and start shouting the death to a certain section of Jewish society just because they happen to be the army or the police or whatever, then, you know, funny how some people might start endorsing that and tweeting about it and goodness knows what.
I mean, he really started a trend with that chant. You heard it being chanted everywhere then. On the Palestine protests that we see on Saturdays, you know, they've got bored of To the River, to the Sea. They've got a bit bored of that song now. So now it's Deaf, Deaf to the IDF. They just keep on chanting it over and over again. And, I mean, it's difficult because on the one hand, it does seem like incitement.
Yep.
And especially when we had that clip saying he does mean individual Israeli soldiers. But it wasn't a time and a place, very specific, right? So, but then it was also on the national broadcaster, as you say, as opposed to no channel, and they clearly had some sort of editorial policy because they decided not to have kneecap on. So it's a difficult one, but it's very sad to see that there was a riot. We like to think that sunlight is the best disinfectant when people say horrible things, but it seems like in this case that maybe that wasn't the case and he actually inspired a lot of hatred.
Indeed. Chloe, on that point, thank you. Great to see you. Chloe Dobbs with us on the programme. She's back very soon. Over to you, 03444 499 1000. Your assessment, Rachel Reeves, the economy, the affordability, where you think taxes might rise, where they should rise, could rise, etc. And are you willing to pay more to save the economy? 03444 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This one in from Heather. He says, more tax won't save the economy. It doesn't make any sense. Tax doesn't save the economy. Getting rid of business rate tax will save the economy, creates more jobs for people and attracts new companies into our country. Bang on there. Let's get a voice note on this issue of taxation from Matt.
We will not raise taxes on working people. Well, yeah, some people on benefits are on over 20 grand a year. Why aren't they being taxed? The whole country's a joke. The whole system's a joke. Stop paying illegal migrants benefits. That will put a plaster over some of your black hole.
Some of it, some would say, wouldn't even touch the sides. Rachel Reeves is being warned she might need to raise taxes, of course, to address this $50 billion deep black hole in public finances. The National Institute of Economic and Social Research says she faces a stark choice: either break her own fiscal rules, cut spending, or hike income tax by 5 percentage points. Despite $40 billion in tax rises last year, she's already burned through her entire budget buffer. Elliot Keck joins us shortly, head of campaigns at the Taxpayers Alliance. First, let's speak with William Schomburg, chief UK economics correspondent at Reuters. William, good afternoon to you, sir.
Afternoon.
Always nice to have you on with us. Listen, I mean, it's one of those issues, isn't it? Everyone in the Treasury sits there. They've got big brains and huge economic minds working away day and night. You know, the best, one would have thought, not just in Westminster, but in the world doing this. And yet successive governments get it spectacularly wrong, and often of their own making. And this might well be one of those situations. You know, we've got a Chancellor that said, no, I'm not raising taxes, while simultaneously sitting on a 50 billion quid black hole. How do you get out of that cul-de-sac?
Yeah, it's looking very difficult, I think, for the government at the moment. Like you say, some of this is of their own making. I think with hindsight, they may be regretting their decision to rule out increases in the big rates of taxation before the election last year. Certainly helped them to counter the arguments of the Conservative Party that the Labour Party was going to come in and be a massive tax and spend party. All that's happened is that the big tax increases have been required so far. And don't forget, last November, taxes went up by about 40 billion. Have been concentrated in particular areas. On that occasion, it was with the employers through the national insurance contributions increase. The question now is, it seems pretty obvious that taxes are going to have to go up again. Will Rachel Reeves decide to pile it on to the employers again, or will she look for other ways to raise the money?
Now, that's the issue, isn't it? Other ways to raise the money. I know they always talk about this file in the Treasury that has all those kind of unpopular tax, you know, pasty tax, caravan tax, all that kind of stuff. And chancellors for years have gone, no, we don't ever go there, not in a million years. They probably individually don't raise loads. But are there options that a chancellor could explore without hurting working people?
Well, I don't think working people are going to feel particularly better off as a result of the next budget. In fact, it seems quite clear that one option the government could do and claim that they're sticking to the letter of their promises in November is to extend the freeze on the thresholds at which people start to pay income tax and at which they start to pay the higher rates of income tax. Now, you can say that's not an increase in the rate of income tax, which would perhaps, just about scientifically, in theory, sort of like meet the criteria, the promises that were made by the Labour Party before the election. But it would raise quite a lot of money. I think people are talking about £8 or £9 billion, but then that's still a massive shortfall. Now, it should be said that the NISA forecast that came out yesterday, the 41.2, I think it was, billion pound shortfall, is at the high end. Other economists aren't that high. People are talking about 20, maybe 30 billion. But whatever the actual number proves to be, and we'll see when the Office of Budget Responsibility comes up with its forecast, it's going to be big and it's going to be very challenging to fill.
Yeah, indeed. Listen, great to have you on with us, William. Thank you for your time. William Schomburg, who is Chief UK Economics Correspondent over there at Reuters. Let's get a word from Elliot Keck, Head of Campaigns at the Taxpayers Alliance. Often helps us out on these kind of stories. Elliot, good afternoon to you. Is there a way of squaring the circle here? I mean, is it upside down? Are politicians looking at this from completely the wrong dimension? If they had some kahunas, they could actually make the economy thrive and we wouldn't be paying more taxes. Is that possible?
Yeah, listen, it absolutely is. When the Labour government came to power last summer, it was clear we had a growing economy, but a weak economy and a fragile economy, and one that could be knocked off course without careful thinking about, your fiscal and economic policy. And what did the Labour government decide to do? Well, this know-nothing rookie chancellor, I'm afraid, decided that the way that she was going to help the economy and boost the economy was to levy £40 billion worth of tax rises, including about £24 billion on businesses, essentially making it more expensive and more difficult to hire new employees and more expensive to pay your existing employees. And the result of that was to knock the economy, of course. We're now seeing lower growth, lower tax receipts, higher inflation, and shock, we now have another fiscal black hole that, again, for some reason, we've decided, and she's clearly deciding, is going to be filled with tax rises.
What if you had to whip out your fiscal crystal ball, Elliot, what do you think she's likely to do? Because this interesting play on words of working people, which for some reason, if you own a very small business where your turnover isn't fantastic, is not considered to be a working person because they got a tax rise in the form of employers' national insurance. So it's not that group. Then what group constitutes a working person? Could they circumnavigate their own rules by saying, right, we're going to go for the really rich? And that way that's not working people. Because she did once famously, I think it was Angela Rayner, said that landlords aren't working people. You know, these kind of nonsense phrases that that get wheeled out. Can they is wordplay their way out of this, I guess, is my point.
I think your previous guest is right. They're probably going to look at frozen tax thresholds. They can formally say they haven't increased tax rates, but of course, with inflation and with pay rises, there is an effective tax rise. Otherwise, I think they're going to look at a whole load of really horrible, fiddly things. I think they'll come after people's savings, people's pensions. They may look at, I mean, they haven't decisively ruled out wealth taxes. I think they may potentially still want to keep those in reserve. And I think they're also just bluntly hoping that something is going to come up to save their bacon. But it looks very, very unlikely. So I think people's savings, people's pensions, all those sorts of things, I think people should be looking at them and thinking about them very, very carefully, because I'm afraid Rachel Reeves is going to be sticking her hand into your pension pot, into your savings pot, in order to try and fix the mistake, fix the mess that she's made.
And I made the point at the beginning of the programme, Elliot, that, you know, all of this would be vaguely palatable if everything else was tickety-boo, if it was, you know, easy to fill your car up with petrol and not too expensive, if buying food for your family was doable, if energy bills were at a reasonable rate. But of course, all of this comes against a backdrop of a cost of living crisis where everything is very expensive. And to factor into that, we have huge waiting lists still in our health service. We have roads that have gaping craters almost in them. Just the basic stuff of life. The UK has sort of stopped working, and yet we're probably going to be asked to pay more.
Yeah, absolutely. And we know where a lot of that money is going to be going. Very bluntly, a lot of that money is going into the bed and board of hundreds of people who will be arriving today and over the coming days during the summer of good weather, small boat arrivals, people who have no right to be here, who have entered the country illegally, and that money is going to be straight to pay for their bed, their board, their dental care, their health care. And you know, that makes this even more difficult, the fact that we are not fixing public services for people that already live here, for British nationals and British citizens, while at the same time those British citizens and British nationals who are working are going to have to be paying more and more tax. So it's a very difficult situation. The social contract does feel like it's starting to break, and the government needs to take urgent action.
Spot on. Elliot, thank you. As ever, Elliot Keck, Head of Campaigns at the Taxpayers Alliance. 1:45. We're going to speak to Robert Jenrick. He's going to join us in the studio in just a couple of moments. Always got a lot to say on the big issues of the day. Robert with us in a couple of moments' time. And, of course, over to you, 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Marks & Sparks has apologised, but they haven't responded to any of the other things that have been coming up for absolutely years. For example, that they allow everybody to identify into whichever changing rooms they want. Women have been complaining about this directly. I have seen a letter that was written in 2017 about this, and the response was, we are inclusive, we are an inclusive retailer. I mean, this nonsense, we are excluding women who want to have a place to get changed in peace. So they've apologised on this, but they haven't actually answered questions about, do you have any male bra fitters who call themselves women?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is 12 minutes to 2 o'clock, and Robert Jenrick's just popped into our studio. He just turned up, which is lovely, Robert, when you do that.
Well, I've just gate crashed the studio.
Nothing wrong with that.
Thank you very much for having me.
No, always nice to see you. Thank you for coming in. I mean, a word, if you would, because we've been talking about this extraordinary situation with Rachel Reeves, who's found herself in this kind of cul-de-sac of fiscal doom, where 50 billion quid black hole, and how much did she bang on about the 22 billion black hole, which was some almost imagination was required to reach that number from Labour, but nonetheless that's the one they ran with. It's now over doubled under their watch.
Yeah, look, I think Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer have got us into a doom loop as a country. Higher taxes, more regulation have led to lower growth and more borrowing. More borrowing is now going to lead to higher taxes this autumn, and on it goes, dragging the economy down and down and down. And everybody I meet feels hard up right now. They feel that the economy is just bumping along the bottom and is going nowhere. It doesn't have to be like this. If we can cut back on some of the wasteful public spending, particularly on benefits, because there's just too many people right now claiming benefits, and we need to get those people off benefits back into
Well, they would say
the
they've
workplace.
already done that.
Well, they haven't done it, have they?
Progress.
They said they were going to do it. Then they backtracked because they couldn't get it past their left-wing backbenchers. So that's going nowhere. They're going to come back to tax businesses and working people, whatever that means, because they can't define it. And this is just going to go on and on and on. It's going absolutely nowhere. We've got to get some growth going into this economy. We've got to get people feeling it as well in their pay packets, so people feel better off.
That's the point, isn't it? There's got to be a sort of tangible nature to this. You've got to sense that things are good. And I've said a couple of times already on today's programme, Robert, that all of this would be not okay, but vaguely palatable if everything else was running nicely, if your energy bill was affordable, if it was easy to go shopping without having to think you've got to take out a loan to do it, if you could fill your car up without panic. But all of those things are happening, and roads, but are full of holes, and the NHS waiting list is still long and
everybody at the moment feels worse off. They feel like they're getting poorer, and the tragedy is we do actually know how we can fix this, how we can turn it around. There is an answer to this. You've got to ensure that we have a sensible energy policy as a country, not the net zero madness that we're seeing from Ed Miliband that's impoverishing people.
Oh, come on, Robert. Ed Miliband's fantastic. He's like a wizard. He's going to give us free electricity via the wind and the sun.
Well, he said before the general election he was going to reduce energy bills. Everyone knows they're rising right now. He's ensured that we're losing tens of thousands of jobs in the North Sea. So we're now importing oil and gas from Norway, who are drilling in the very same sea that he is removing the licences from. We're trading a car made in Sunderland for one made in China. It is policies like this that are wrecking the British economy right now.
But have Labour sorted it in another way? Because you might have heard this story, but there's this new scheme on the street called one in, one out. And this takes mathematics to areas, I mean, René Descartes would be choking on this one. I mean, so you get rid of 50 people, but you bring in 50 people. So you still have 50 more people than you should have. I mean, it's mathematically illiterate. It doesn't make any sense, but they're absolutely convinced it's going to work. Keir Starmer says it will. There is a slight problem called left-wing lawyers who are likely to jump on. The first person that we hear Yvette Cooper say, we're going to deport these people today, you just know, and the rules are in the rule book already to be seen, there's going to be a problem here, a problem for this government, because those lawyers are sharpening their quills as we speak.
Look, the small boats are a total mess. People are furious, and they're right to be. We're an island nation, for goodness sake. We should be able to secure our borders, and a country without borders is not really a country at all. This latest scheme by the Prime Minister is a total joke. It hasn't got a cat in hell's chance of working. It's not 1 in, 1 out. It's 20 in, 1 out. And unless you can be clear that absolutely no one who comes here on a small boat is ever going to be able to make a life in the UK, you're not going to break the business model of the people smuggling gangs. People are going to continue to try their luck every day. If Keir Starmer and Yvette Cooper think that this is going to work, they need to have their heads checked, that they have lost the plot totally. What they do seem to have realised, belatedly, is you need to have some form of deterrent. And what I've been arguing for a long time, so ultimately why I resigned from Cabinet at the end of the last Conservative government, is you need to have a very clear deterrent. One whereby if you come here illegally on a small boat, you are detained, you're not in a hotel, you're not out walking the streets of our country, and you're deported, either back home to your own country or to a third country like Rwanda. It's as simple as that. And to make that work, we've got to reform our human rights laws. We've got to leave the European Convention on Human Rights, end this merry-go-round of legal appeals where left-wing charities and activist lawyers prevent us from controlling our borders. If we do those things, change our laws, deport the illegal migrants, then we can fix this. And we've got to do it, because as you see from those protests at the hotels 100%. Across the country, the patience of the British public has completely snapped.
I keep hearing people say, well, it's only 4% of overall immigration, the illegal stuff, if you like, channel crossings. OK, let's take it at face value, it's 4%. It's 4% that's costing £5, £6, £7 million a day. That's not an insignificant 4%. That doesn't even include all the kind of cultural assimilation issues with housing, pressures on local services. I mean, it's a massive problem. No, I think the 4% thing is a misnomer when people wheel that out.
170,000 people who've crossed the channel. This has been going on for 7 years now. These are mostly young men, undocumented people who are breaking into our country. The hotels are transforming communities. This is doing incalculable damage to our country. It's got to end, and we know how to do it. Change the human rights laws, deport the illegal migrants, and then we can bring this to a close once and for all.
Let's bring in another story here that does have, there is a correlation with this, and that's the true scale of foreign sex offenders in this country, which is, well, frankly, off the scale. I mean, there's a huge area of concern. Again, it's one of those issues that nobody really says very much about. It gets sort of mentioned, and then, we'll just move on to the next story. I don't hear much from Yvette Cooper on this.
No, I think there's been a veil of secrecy over this issue, perhaps because officials and politicians didn't trust the public to know what was really going on. What I've been campaigning for years now is that we published the data on who is committing crimes in this country by their nationality, their visa status, their asylum status, their country of origin, how they got into this country. For example, did they come in on a small boat? Sunlight is the best disinfectant. Let's really see what's happening and then act upon it. Because I want an immigration system that puts the safety of the British public first, second and last. And it may mean some tough choices. It might mean that we massively reduce the number of visas that we issue to people coming from certain countries if the data shows that they are much more likely to commit serious crimes, like sexual crimes, than Brits would do. And the indicative data that we've got, that we've managed to get out of the government by hook or by crook, does tell a very serious story. Afghans and Eritreans, 20 times more likely to be convicted of a sexual offence than a Brit. An Albanian, dozens of times, 250 times in fact, more likely to be convicted of a drug-related offence than a Brit. There are some nationalities who are less likely to commit crimes. Germans, Indians, Americans, for example. but let's have an honest debate and then let's take the action that's necessary to keep the public safe.
The problem with this, I think, is the problem for Labour with this, Robert, is that they're uncomfortable with this, the language that needs to be used to actually say, it doesn't mean that if you're Albanian or Eritrean or whatever, that you're born with a gene that makes you X, Y, Z. Nobody is saying that, but the left struggle to, when things start to get divided down by nationality, that lexicon, if you like, is a problem for people like Yvette Cooper, because you'll never hear her say, why is it that foreign national sex offenders are nearly triple on balance that of Brits, and in some cases many dozens times more? She will never say that.
No, well,
she won't even get into that conversation.
It cuts against everything that they have been arguing, not just in recent years, but for the whole of my adult lifetime, that diversity is our strength, that multiculturalism should be our national project. Well, I think multiculturalism has failed. I think that a degree of diversity is helpful in any country, but hyper-diverse communities where there's no integration, where there's nothing to integrate into, frankly, it is a disaster waiting to happen. And unfortunately, that's what's going on in some parts of our country right now. There was an interview with Jess Phillips recently, the minister responsible for women's safety. Yes. And she couldn't bring herself to acknowledge this issue, that some people from alien cultures, which do have a backward attitude towards women, are more likely to commit sexual offences against a woman than British citizens. And when eventually she acknowledged that this might be the case, she merely said that there wasn't enough resources to tackle this. She had to focus on other things. That's not acceptable.
And these are numbers that come from her own government now.
Exactly.
These aren't numbers that have been fished out of some moody think tank.
We should never put the safety or the interests of an illegal migrant above women and girls from our own country. That is what I'm asking.
Just a very final point, Robert Jenrick. How's life in the Tory party? I know those polls are a little bit iffy still. I'm not talking about Polish people. I'm talking about the opinion polls. Reform still riding. I mean, that must be, I don't say this mischievously. It's a genuine task here, isn't it, for the Conservatives? The oldest political party on the planet, the most successful on the planet, and here you are sort of riding a very poor third in the polls.
I'm under no illusions about how difficult the challenge is for the Conservative Party. We were in government for 14 years and we let people down on some of the biggest challenges facing our country. We just didn't do enough, whether it was immigration, the public services. People just don't feel as if they're taking home enough money at the end of the month. So the Tory party has got to learn its lessons. It's got to listen to the public and then change, be a different party. If we can do that, then I think we can regain the public's trust and confidence and bring forward serious answers to those big challenges that are facing the country.
Was there a kind of chink of light yesterday? There was this curious moment at or was it the day before now, where Reform had this press conference. Their new prison czar, Vanessa Frake, a woman we've had on the programme, very experienced in the judicial world, of course, in prisons. That's been her life. So they made this comment about trans women may sometimes have to go into a women's jail, which sort of very much at odds, even if you didn't know what Reform's policy was. Didn't sound very Farage-like when she said this. And there was a bit of backpedalling and no, there's very specific reasons, and Nigel was sort of wheeled out to kind of defend what she meant. And it's sort of, for many people, we had lots of calls on it yesterday, slightly shattered their view of what Reform are. I did make the point that the Conservatives are very clear on this.
Well, my view is very simple. Men should not be in women's prisons. End of story. It poses a risk to female prisoners, and as importantly, it challenges the very welcome, if belated, decision by the Supreme Court, which said that we have to respect basic biology and common sense in every aspect of our lives, whether it's women's toilets, whether it's professional sport, whether it's in our prisons, whether it's what we teach our kids in school. I don't want any rowing back on the welcome change that we're now finally seeing in our country. And Frake, the prison governor and expert that Reform have hired, is clearly on the wrong side of public opinion on this issue. The Conservative Party has a very clear view, and we're going to continue to fight for that.
That is Tory policy.
It is.
On that point, Robert Jenrick, good to see you.
Thank you very much. Good
Robert
to be here.
Jenrick, Conservative MP, Shadow Justice Secretary, with us on the programme. Thank you to him. Over to you shortly, 0344 499 1000. A little after 2 o'clock, let's get the latest news headlines.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
And welcome back. Yeah, five minutes after... 5 minutes after 2 o'clock, right here at the home of Common Sense. Good afternoon. You're very welcome. Loads to get into. We're talking about Rachel Reeves, massively under pressure. She's now, what's she going to do? Hike taxes immediately, facing a £50 billion black hole, with the Chancellor already on course to miss key targets and spending promises as the nation's finances plunge deeper into the red. Look, I know there's some global things going on in this world, but this is grim. It's absolutely disastrous for this government as they move into the second year in office. Just think about that. Also this afternoon, small boat migrants could dodge deportation to France under Keir Starmer's one-in, one-out returns deal by claiming human rights protections or saying they're under 18. You can just hear the excuses coming. We were talking to Robert Jenrick just before the news on that. His colleague, the Shadow Home Secretary, has been out on the channel today. It's an absolute mess. You've got the French Navy, essentially, escorting the boat over to British waters. And former US President Bill Clinton and his wife Hillary have been subpoenaed to give bombshell testimony regarding the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. We'll look at that story shortly. Could this drop Mr. Trump into the thick of it, or will it in some way drop them into the thick of it? Details on the way. Everything you need to know. We'll bring you all the breaking news as well right here on Talk. 0344 499 1000. Comment coming in from, and bearing in mind we're talking about that, we threw the question out at the beginning, are you willing to pay more tax to save the economy? One here says, no name for reasons that will become apparent, and no sympathy sought either. But I left school at 16 with 2 O-levels, but I worked hard and took opportunities. I'm 55 now and earn between 150,000 and 250,000 per year, but only reached that level in the last 8 years. But with more than 50% of my salary going straight to HMRC via PAYE with VAT on everything I buy, with 70% of the fuel I buy being taxed with council tax, etc., it's not inconceivable that 80% of what I earn goes to the Treasury. So even though I am far from stressed about it day to day, I am worried about my future and when I can retire. So would I be happy to pay more tax? I am highly concerned about it and still watch every cost that comes my way. Make decisions on whether I need it or not want it as I strive to find a work exit route. And the route is being planned out of this country as soon as possible before any chance I have of developing a savings and asset advantage for me is eaten up by the government in the next 4 years. I could have actually written that text myself. I get every similar age group as well. I understand every single bit of that. It's what I was saying this morning about the dishwasher tablet dilemma that I had in Tesco, and it sounds kind of almost incidental, but there was a point, there was a wider point in it, thinking firstly, how does this cost that much? Yes, of course I can afford it. I can afford to buy several bags of it. That's not the point. It's not the point that last texter was making either. It's not about affordability here and now. You think about your future. You think about, God, I'm in a position where, you know, years, not that long ago, somebody like our last commentator there could have bought a new house every year for the next 4 years and rented them. We couldn't do that now. Getting the right pension arrangements in order, putting it all in a bank and going, what's the interest rate looking like? Oh, it's pretty much diddly, and I'm going to be taxed on it anyway, in addition to all the other taxes. And I share that. This is the sort of thing that I lay in bed and think about. How do you know, when you add it all up, how much do you give back to the Treasury and how much do you keep for yourself? And you think, what sort of weird upside down world are we living in where we've arrived in a place where you could be giving 80% of your salary back to the Treasury, and then any little bit of imagination you might employ to go, okay, well, I'll take out, there's an ISA, or there's a new way of, you know, saving, or there's a new bank. No, there's nothing. I will be robbed by HMRC before I'm rewarded in any kind of incentive to invest my money. So why don't I just hoover it all up, go to Dubai, enjoy the sunshine and pay no tax at all? Because in the case of our last commentator, I've paid loads of it for the entirety of my life. Let's get a word on all of these issues. Reem Ibrahim is the head of media at the Institute of Economic Affairs, a regular with us on the programme. Reem, good afternoon to you.
Hi, good afternoon, Ian. How are you?
I'm all right. Well, let's start with shall we start with a lesson for Rachel Reeves? Let's imagine there we are, standing at the top of the table in the Treasury. You've got your big flip chart and an abacus there, Reem, and she's saying, I've got a problem. 50 billion quid's worth of problem. What's her way out of this without, and again, I think it's going to come down to the imaginative use of this term working people, which they've already elasticated that phrase once. That's the only way I can think she can begin to make any kind of headway, because she says she's not going to break her own fiscal rules, and they're absolutely firm on that. So what the hell do they do?
You're absolutely right. And this is the doom loop really in action, isn't it, right? You've got the government that wants to increase public spending, all of the mayhem around the potential benefit cuts when it comes to personal independence payments, which would have only been about £5 billion anyway, actually ended up resulting in the government spending more. So this really is that kind of political pressure that they're experiencing. And yet at the same time, the government, no government in this country has ever raised taxes beyond the current sort of level. I mean, we're talking about 37%, 38% of GDP, which is a huge amount of money. And public spending as a proportion of GDP is continuing to rise. It's about 47% now. It could reach above 50% in the next few years. That means that the UK economy will be mostly the government. I mean, that is absolutely astronomical, the kind of thing we saw in post-Soviet Eastern Europe. So I think we have to be very, very clear about the level of public spending that we're seeing at the moment. And so to answer your question, we just have to cut public spending. The size of the state is far too big. And I think that what's interesting about the current government situation is anytime they have tried to cut public spending, their Labour Party backbenchers have just refused to accept it. And I think that the weak leadership has resulted in huge numbers of backbenchers in the Labour Party thinking that as long as we organise a rebellion, we can actually change the government's course.
And I think if we sensed we were getting something for it, about 3 or 4 years ago, just a slight sort of personal anecdote, I'd gone to a doctor. It was a very minor thing, but anyway, I'd gone to see the doctor, and the doctor had referred me to a consultant, and I ended up at Guy's Hospital, just behind us here, and they sorted it all out. There was no big issue. But about a year later, I just randomly got a letter saying, "Oh, the doctor would like to see you for a kind of catch-up and a check-up." And I jumped on the train, and I walked into Guy's Hospital, one of the most famous hospitals in the world, and I walked in and I had a spring in my step. I thought, what a civilised world I live in, where I haven't written to them, they've written to me and said, just making sure everything's okay with, you know, what happened. And I sat there and I waited in the waiting room. A very lovely lady said, you know, help yourself to a cup of tea. And then I went to see the doctor. I was only in there about 3 minutes, and it was lovely. Shook his hand and away I went. And I thought, what an amazing place. I love paying my taxes for this to happen. It was a lovely feeling of living in a civilised society. Now, I don't feel that anymore. Somebody in my family was in hospital just last week, so I was with them during that time. And although the treatment, it was all fine, but the treatment was great and the staff were fantastic, I didn't get that same sense. I felt I was in a pressure cooker. I felt I was kind of, you know, talk about one in, one out. I mean, it did feel a little bit like that. And of course, the point to this is that you don't mind paying taxes if you're seeing progress and getting a reasonable society in return. But if you're not getting that, it becomes almost impossible for the government.
You're absolutely right, and I'm really sorry about your family member that's in hospital. I think what's important to note is that whilst the anecdotes might suggest that people feel as though 10, 20, 30 years ago things were actually a lot better than they are now, part of that is, I think, when it comes to things like the National Health Service, is that, you know, huge amounts of public spending haven't solved a lot of the quite large pressures. Yeah. Now, we have to be very honest with ourselves. I mean, I mentioned earlier that we need to cut public spending. There's literally no way out of this. I mean, the current level of spending is simply unsustainable. We have to reduce the size of the state. But what that shouldn't look like is the American Doge, where they didn't actually reduce what the state does, but they just ended up cutting spending, cutting sort of staff members, civil servants here and there. What we need is a fundamental sort of Javier Milei afuera. We need to actually reduce what the state physically does. Yeah. And we have to look at what the state is spending huge amounts of money on. Now, if anybody looks at sort of the public spending projections as a whole, the vast majority of public spending goes on pensions and the NHS, social healthcare. Yep. So I think we have to be very honest about the fact that that is where a lot of the government spending is going. Now, you know, pensioners today will say, well, I've paid in my entire life. I have to ensure that I get that taken out. And I think that's absolutely fair. But the conversation has to be about the long term. I will probably never receive a state pension because it's just simply unsustainable. We're about to spend the same that we spend on defence, education and policing alone, just on pensions. So I know it's a difficult pill to swallow, and these conversations are really, really important. But if we want to seriously reduce public spending, we have to look at what the government does and whether or not there are ways that private individuals can save for their retirement, save for their older age themselves, without the government being liable for those spending measures.
Yeah, I mean, that's it, isn't it? And it's interesting. I'm obviously older than you, and I'm not sure I'm going to receive a state pension either. So, I mean, that's how bad it is out there. Life is more than a little real tricky. Let's move to this story. It's we mentioned the one-in, one-out policy announced by Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron a little while back, and of course yesterday it came into action. We've already seen what the migrant response is, and that's to send another boatload of migrants across the Channel. So hasn't quite had an obvious demonstrable effect just yet. But what we also know is that it's likely to end up as a kind of lawyer frenzy on this, because the minute the government say, well, this person here is going to be sent back to France under the new deal, you can just see somebody says, cue the lawyers, and out they come with their big quills and their impressive clipboards to say, no, I'm sorry, you can't do that. My client's got all sorts of issues here. There's no way you can send them back to France. You know that's going to happen.
Yeah, this is the real impact of lawfare, isn't it? The fact that we've got so many different laws that mean that lawyers can then shift what the government have intended to do. So the Rwanda scheme is just one example of that. Boris Johnson this week has come out and said, it's amazing that the Americans are now using that system. We should reinstate the Rwanda scheme as quickly as possible. Now, the American system is interesting. The deal they have with Rwanda, I think it's only about 250 migrants that are actually going to be sent there, if I read that correctly. But
yes.
It's sort of, I think, symbolic, and I think part of it acts as a deterrent in a way. If you come to the country illegally, you are removed. You are not afforded the same benefits as everybody else, and I think that's really at the crux of it. I am personally very, very pro-immigration. I think that a liberal, free labour market is really important. I think if you're a British business and you want to hire somebody from across the world, you should be allowed to do that without the government getting in your way. My problem is, I think that the majority of people in this country's problem is that we have vast numbers of people that are coming illegally. They're breaking the law. We have no idea who they are. We have no documents proving that they are who they say they are. We have no idea what their criminal records are. And they are being afforded taxpayer-funded benefits. And I think that's really at the crux of where this problem has come. I think that actually integration would be a lot easier if we had a genuinely free labour market where those people would have to come here and actually take up a job. I think most people wouldn't have a problem with that. So the Rwanda scheme, I think, is really important, actually, especially with regard to the way that looks. If the government are able to then reinstate that kind of scheme. But as you said, I mean, it really is about the legal aspects of this, isn't it? If Rwanda and the sort of ECHR is still implemented, it will be very, very difficult to achieve that. And again, as you said, those lawyers will just be coming out in their droves, defending their human rights, whether it be for chicken nuggets or whatever it is.
Oh, they're already circling like the proverbial legal sharks. Let's finish on this one. We touched on this, of course, yesterday. Nigel Farage's prison czar saying don't ban trans women from female jails. There will be some exceptions to that. We had Robert Jenrick in the studio with us just before the news. He said that's, completely at odds with Conservative policy, that's for sure. And he welcomed, of course, the Supreme Court ruling a few months ago. He said Vanessa Frake is really on the wrong side of public opinion on this. I think he's probably right. And it was a very weird moment to hear somebody from the reform camp saying this stuff.
Yeah, it was really odd. So I think it's interesting. I remember months ago talking to a friend who is sort of a big sort of activist in this particular space and talks a lot about women's spaces being incredibly important. And she was saying, I said, are you tempted by reform? And she was saying that actually the Conservatives have been consistent on this. Kemi Badenoch specifically has always said, women are biological women, they're adult human females. And I think that that is a huge attraction to a lot of women on the right. I mean, the fact that Reform have got this wrong is a huge blow to a lot of women and a lot of men that see sense on this issue. A woman is an adult human female. And whilst we can show compassion and, emotion and empathy for people that may be struggling with whatever mental health crisis they are struggling with, it's really important that those rights don't infringe on the rights of women. And we have to make sure that women and girls are safe. And women and girls will not be safe if biological men, are allowed to enter those spaces. And that when it comes to prisons, the fact that Reform's policy advisor on prisons and justice is saying the complete opposite and not having a hard, solid opinion on this, I think is really quite concerning.
Yeah, spot on. Reem, we hit the clock, but thank you very much indeed, as ever, for joining us. Reem Ibrahim, Head of Media at the Institute of Economic Affairs. Over to you on anything you've heard answer. That's how it works here. If you heard something along the way, you want to chip in, 0344 499 1000. Leave a voice note if you want to bypass the news or you can't hang on, or drop us a message on 87222, particularly with that question, are you willing to pay more tax to save the economy? And your overview on Rachel Reeves' strange dilemma. Our lines are open. This is Talk.
I know what an AA does. An AA is the top assistant who expedites, because I've been AA to people.
Okay, I accept all of that.
Epstein stuff.
I'm not questioning any of that. I'm not necessarily saying it's not true. What I'm asking you is, don't the Clintons have questions to answer on this?
Doesn't Donald Trump have questions? And this is deflection of the president.
Well, you're deflecting because you're not answering my question, Robert. Don't the Clintons have questions to answer here?
Are you shocked that Bill Clinton was a bad boy?
I mean, it's different being a bad boy.
We have far too much debt now, which effectively means that other people own our debt, and we are at their behest rather than
okay,
our own.
What are we going to do about it, Rupert? I don't want to talk esoterically about it. I want to know what we're going to do about it.
Julia, there's only one thing to do, and that is to radically pursue a Thatcherite.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This from Heather. It says, more tax won't save the economy. It doesn't make any sense. Tax doesn't save the economy. Getting rid of business rates, I think I've read this before, will save the economy, create more jobs for the people and attract new companies into our country. Yeah, I'm happy to repeat that as well, because it completely reaffirms basic financial common sense. This from Jeff, who says, afternoon, I'm happy to pay more tax. The problem is, will the government of the day spend it where it should go? History, including the current government, continually shows that they can't manage the money, so it's better in our pockets. And one from Howard in Suffolk, who says, the momentum downwards in the economy has passed the point where anyone can stop it. We ain't getting out of this. The IMF are coming within a year. Interest rates must be higher than 1990, says Howard. The only, and it's not really a scintilla of light, but economically, in comparison to other countries, America doing better, India doing better, but a lot of our nearest neighbours or similar-sized economies, certainly Germany, but I'm thinking France and possibly Spain in there as well, are not doing as well. And certainly the plans, the IMF plans for growth, predictions for growth, were certainly not as generous to those countries as it was to ours. So now I don't say that because that's, oh great, you know, we're top of the table or one of the top 3 when it comes to predictions for growth. That's to be encouraged, but makes you wonder what else is going on out there. And the fiscal model, how do you begin to even address this? What I get tired of is people going, well, even if you stopped immigration, 7 million quid a day in hotels and associated costs, it wouldn't oddly touch the sides in terms of the bigger picture. I struggle with it. How many more things are there that wouldn't touch the... We keep hearing that every time. Well, get rid of this. Well, it won't make a lot of difference. We'll get rid of that. Well, it won't make a lot. Put it all together, I'm pretty sure if you could save 10 million... What's it? Finn, can you do the calculation on this? £10 million a day, OK, over the course of 1 year. So that's 10 million times 365. What number does that work out at? And I'll tell you in about 7 seconds. How much? 2.65 billion. 3.65 billion. He did it very quickly. 3.65, he assumes. He should be on flipping countdown, not answering the phones here. 3.65 billion. Well, there you go. I'd say that's quite a lot of money, wouldn't you? And that's in migration, hotel costs and associated areas, plus all those other little elements. You go, well, that's a waste of money. David Lammy's private planes, for example. That's probably another 20 billion. Finn was correct, by the way. He's crunched the numbers. There it is. Thoughts on that? 0344 499 1000. Tony is in Lancashire. Tony, how are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. Yourself, Ian?
Yeah, very good, thanks. What are your thoughts? The black hole of doom.
Well, for me, straight away, mothball net zero, open up the oil fields and the gas fields. That's got to generate a hell of a lot of money. To me, this is like a house. You know, one of these money pits when you buy a house and it's costing you a fortune and you haven't got the money to actually fix it, and then you know you lose it. You know, the mortgage is foreclosed on you and they take it off you and somebody else benefits. That's where we're going at the moment with the amount of money that we owe. They're not going to do anything. So we've got to get the gas and oil back because, I mean, we're still using gas and oil. We're just buying it from somebody else when we've got it sitting under the sofa.
Yeah. I think we're buying some of it from the Norwegians, aren't we? Who are actually literally taking it from our, from that very area that we've stopped taking it from.
We are a laughing stock, aren't we?
It's a bit weird. I mean, if you net zero, I didn't even, when I was talking aloud there about areas you could save money on, I mentioned migrant hotels. Even if you went, OK, we're going to be generous, Ed Miliband. We understand if you can find an alternative energy source, that's fantastic. We'd all support it if it was great and made sense. Of course we would. However, you're going a bit too fast on this, Sunshine, so why don't we halve what you're doing? That'll give us another 20 billion.
Absolutely. I've also got a little idea that'll save a fortune on the boats, the crossings.
Go on.
I'm guessing a lot of these people that come from these countries have never seen Jaws. I'd get a big mobile screen and I'd go up and down the beach playing Jaws, frighten the life out of them.
That's maybe what, yeah. Did you know that some of the biggest sharks in the world live in the English Channel? David Attenborough, we could get AI David Attenborough to voice it so it sounded credible.
And a couple of old fishing boats going up and down, chumming the waters.
Yes, sort of an old knackered fishing boats that have been eaten by sharks, and maybe a sort of a red fountain of liquid coming out the water. There's another one.
Might not be so keen to jump in them boats then.
Yeah. Shark-infested waters. I don't know how you spell that in Albanian, but you take the point. Listen, great one, Tony. Thank you very much indeed for that. Let's get a quick word from Helen in Leicestershire on the trans issue. Helen, good afternoon to you.
Yeah, good afternoon, Ian. Lovely to talk to you.
You too, thank you.
I'm a believer in biological sex, just to make that clear.
Oh, you're crazy, Helen. What are you talking about?
I know. And the last thing I want to see is any woman being terrorised or attacked by somebody in a safe space who is biologically male. But my question would be, on the back of this rather unfortunate communication breakdown with reform, is if somebody indeed has gone through the whole process of surgery and having their dangly bits removed and hormones and living as a woman for a long time and then commits a crime, the question the question surely should be, where do we put this person, into which prison?
Yeah.
And I think that reform have kind of missed a trick, really, because they should have spelt this out very, very clearly. which I don't think they've done.
I don't think they did. Anne Widdecombe was on with us yesterday, Helen, and I don't know if you heard it, but she was saying that if somebody has gone the whole hog, like you just said, and they, I mean, they're clearly not a woman still, but they look like a woman. They don't have their male bits anymore. They have a surgically formed female bits and all of that. To put that person in a male prison is also dangerous.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I would have thought it would behove the Reform Party to look at the statistics to find out how many people fall into this category. Yeah. And there's probably a very, very small number. And then maybe set up a small facility that would be a prison or some whatever for specific these types of people. So instead of which, we're always talking we want grown-up politics. The nuance of this has been completely lost, I feel, in the sort of hysteria of people saying, oh, my God, Reform are backtracking on what they said, you know. But if we want to have a mature conversation, then surely we should be able to discuss issues of nuance without everybody, you know, throwing their toys out the pram. It strikes me, anyway.
You would think so. You would think so. Listen, Helen, it's a great call. Thank you very much indeed for that, and lovely to speak with you. Swan says, please stop quoting incorrectly on-air Reform policy reference prisons. Reform's policy reference prison is never to have biological males in women's prisons. Well, what's interesting is that that's not quite what Vanessa Frake said, who is their prison spokesman, and it's certainly not what Anne Widdecombe said yesterday, who is also a spokesperson for Reform UK. Now, Zia Youssef did tweet, a Reform government will never permit men to be housed in women's prisons. But that is somewhat at odds with what was said at that conference yesterday. And again, many people are picking up on the Anne Widdecombe issue and the Vanessa Frake issue, so go figure. The point is, regardless of, well, she said this, but she actually meant that, and, you know, OK, they said that, but what they really meant... The fact is, it's a very unusual crack in the armour of Reform. It's a bit of a schoolboy error to not have really thrashed that one out before you stand there in front of a microphone. I'm sure more clarity will be on the way. 0344 499 1000. Lots still to come. We are, of course, going to cross in a few moments as well to Michael Graham, our man in Washington. There's a couple of stories coming out of the United States. In particular, ex-President Bill Clinton and wife Hillary ordered to give testimony regarding Jeffrey Epstein. Details coming next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is from Clay in Folkestone. He says, I started work when I was 15, retired when I was 66, so I paid national insurance for 51 years, and they say my state pension is a benefit. The Tories and this motley crew have had so much money over the years, so where is it all gone? And no, I don't think they hit pensioners. Great show. Best wishes, says Clay. Thank you for that. Yeah, it should never, your state pension should never be described, ever, as a benefit. You've literally paid into it. You've coughed up that money diligently, initially week in, week out, back in the day, Clay, and then month in, month out. Out it's come from your pay packet, and that is your money being reinvested for your future. It's not a favour from the government. They're not. It feels like that, though, doesn't it? When they talk about it, oh, we're going to help pensioners. Right, it's kind of their money already, all right? You do understand that, Rachel and previous chancellors of the Exchequer. Jane says, I'm horrified I might have to pay more tax. Send home illegal migrants and let their populations pay for them out of their taxes. I want to leave the UK. Thank you, Jane. How many more messages are we going to see that echo that sentiment? Now, let's move to this. Everybody's favourite former president, Bill Clinton. I don't know why, whenever I say Bill Clinton, you have to sort of laugh before. I think it's probably because I recently saw him on The Simpsons for the umpteenth time. Makes a few appearances on that. Former US President Bill Clinton and his wife Hillary, that's even more funny, have been subpoenaed to give bombshell testimony about their links to the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. They'll appear before the Republican-led House Oversight Committee in October alongside other high-profile Democrats and several ex-Trump officials. This comes as Epstein's accomplice, Ghislaine Maxwell, is moved to a cushy, low-security jail despite her 20-year sentence for trafficking girls. Michael Graham, US political commentator, managing editor at Inside Sources, our man on the Hill, is with us. Michael, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. You know, it's so hilarious. You laugh every time you say Bill and Hillary Clinton, and yet sometime in the future, people are going to look back and go, wait, you almost made both of them president? And yes. I know. I mean, few people's fortunes have fallen as far as the Clintons. You look at this at what they're going to be asking questions about in this Epstein case, and you realize that there was a flight on the Epstein Love Boat airplane with Jeffrey Epstein, Bill Clinton, and Kevin Spacey, which sounds like the opening of a joke.
He's a good guy.
He's a
good guy, Kevin. Spacey, you know, Spacey used to live around the corner from here.
I did not know that.
Yeah, because he was the artistic director of the Old Vic Theatre.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Years. Absolutely. Yeah.
So he lived around, and we went to our Christmas party once, and he was in the bar with. Yeah, he was regularly seen, like in the little mini mart and places like that, in that neck of the woods.
And the boys section of the local clothing store.
And this was the guy. This was the guy at the time. I thought, wow, he's a kind of Hollywood A-lister, and here he is, you know, buying dog food or something in a tiny little newsagent.
Yikes.
And then, of course, you know, it all went badly for him. But clearly there'd been some history to that. But, I mean, what do we make of, you know, the fact that somebody goes on a plane, before we knew anything about Epstein and his horrendous proclivities, I mean, lots of people would have known him, done business with him, and, you know, they could be legit, of course. So just because somebody was on the plane, so the argument goes, doesn't mean that they're, to coin our phrase, a wrong-un.
Right, and not every flight obviously went to Epstein's island. You know, he was flying people around Europe, you know, and so, you know, some of the stuff was reportedly related to charity. I think that what I've learned about a story that I, quite frankly, have not cared about, I just, you know, there's perjury in the world. I got other stuff to focus on. Until recently, it was not a topic in D.C. politics, you know, per se. What I've learned is how little we actually know. How many times was Bill Clinton on the plane? Yes. Where did it fly to? He says it was only 4 times, and I think 2002, 2003. We don't know. That's what he says. Well, no one believes anything Bill Clinton says. I mean, come on. You know, how many times were other political figures on the plane with them? I mean, we don't have a lot of facts. We have a lot of I heard and somebody said. Yeah. And so that, I think now, if we're going to do this, my hope is that we can kind of do it, you know, just get it all out. You know, take a a political cathartic and just bleh, this everything that happened, all the ugliness, whatever was involved. What I find fascinating is that Democrats seeing Donald Trump embarrassed, which is really hard to do. I mean, when is Donald Trump ever embarrassed?
Yeah.
Seeing him embarrassed, they've seized upon this. Everything I know about the case, and once again, the whole point we don't really know, but all of the pre-sale is that he was a huge Democrat. When he was hanging out with Donald Trump, it was when Donald Trump was basically kind of a quasi-independent, Democrat-leaning Manhattan business guy. He didn't start hanging out with, obviously, MAGA came years later. And so do Democrats really think that taking this can and kicking off the lid and throwing, the contents out on the ground is not going to embarrass a lot of Democrats? I predict this is going to be a classic case of be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, I do wonder about that. How has this come around, Michael? Tell us why suddenly we're going to see Bill and Hillary up against this oversight committee in October. What happened?
Well, in part it's because one of the engines behind the MAGA movement is, some people call it conspiracy theory, some people call it, appropriate fear of the government, but just the premise that, from the financial collapse of 2008 to COVID, on and on and on, you've been lied to, that, and that people in power in DC take care of themselves and each other. And this story reads like the classic case of that. And so a lot of political conversation in the 2024 election, this was hit on, and the base really believed, okay, we're going to elect Donald Trump. They're going to go in and they're going to start telling us the truth, on many topics, from UFOs to everything else. And the fact that the Trump administration sent people out to go, yeah, we looked, there's nothing, bye,
Yeah.
Whoa, that was exactly the opposite of what the base wanted to hear. The base started talking to members of Congress who represent them. Congress started squealing. Trump has been in this mess. And then once again, seeing Trump embarrassed, Democrats jumped on board. Now you've got enough votes to actually cause things to go forward. And that's why you're going to have this House oversight hearing. By the way, it should be noted, there'll be Republican attorneys general who are going to be brought in, like Bill Barr, along with Democrats like Eric Holder of the Obama era. And I think the question, from what I understand, is going to be, why did you guys sit on this? Why are we just now finding things? Why didn't you do something? And I don't know what their answer is going to be. I mean, it's an interesting question. It's like the Russiagate stuff. During Russiagate, and this is another one the base is crazy over, we know that we were lied to. There was not, Donald Trump, believe it or not, was not secret agent Orsky Borsky, working undercover for the, for the KGB.
He'd be a rubbish secret agent, right?
Exactly. Oh my God, the first person to tell you he's a spy for the Russians would be Trump, saying, hey, I'm a spy for the Russians.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing.
And people came on TV and told us, we have the documentation of the proof that there's something here. And now we know it was all lies. It started with Hillary Clinton funded lies. And there are people, not a majority, but the hardcore base of Trump supporters, that's why they're Trump supporters. I want the truth. I'm tired of being lied to, and so you're going to see more. That's why you have the Justice Department working on the Russiagate case. Is there criminality? Like, is this bank robbing or whatever? No. Did people possibly commit perjury? Whatever? Yes. But the big picture is, we elected outsiders to turn over the box. The box is not turned over. It's a lot like the energy behind the Reform Party. It's the same thing.
But I do wonder whether, when it comes to sort of powerful people, by the way, I saw an interview, Tucker Carlson interviewing somebody on Epstein, and I hadn't really thought about this before, but he asked the question to I think it was an author of a book, where did Epstein get his money from? You might have seen this. And she said, nobody knows.
That's right.
In fact, there's no trail, really, of how he became rich, which is why some people have wondered whether he was some kind of clandestine sort of agent that was giving info and, being able to get money because people were blackmailable or whatever. And that goes into a lot of deep territory. But the main question, where did he get his money? That is fascinating.
And I think there's something else that's thanks to the availability of information from all sorts of sources like Talk, is that people are starting to go, wait, why don't we know that? It's like the guy who almost killed Donald Trump. We almost know nothing about this guy. You know, the people who, you know, obviously, you know, Lee Harvey Oswald and previous assassins in the past, you know, their life stories were completely spread, you know, displayed, etc. But the two guys who tried to kill Donald Trump, we almost know nothing about it. And I'm hearing more and more from conservative activists. I want to just know what's going on. That's what I want to know. A seemingly unrelated but related issue, the new jobs numbers. People are upset that Trump is going to fire the person in charge of the jobs numbers at the BLS. Well, he makes a great point. You look back at the last 30 months, every month has been wildly revised. 2 or 3 months later, like, wait, you guys can't even count these jobs? Does everybody suck at their jobs?
Yeah,
What's
this
really
is not
going
new.
on?
This is not new. It's a very good point about the assassin of Trump, or the attempted assassin. I mean, if I said John Hinckley, everyone knows he's the guy that tried to shoot Reagan. You know, we know
What's
that.
the name of the guy that tried to shoot Trump? What's his name?
Exactly. I don't know his name.
Exactly. Nobody knows because there's no interest in pursuing it. And this is what the outsiders, and this is a movement across Europe with some people say far right parties, far left parties, whatever. But I would argue that the big movement is outsiders versus insiders.
Yeah.
The outsiders are frustrated with how bad a job the insiders have done. I actually believe in elitism. I have no problem with it, but you have to have noblesse oblige. That is the idea that if you're going to give us, whether it's the king or the prime minister, whatever, this power and special treatment, we have to deliver. Your life has to get better.
Yeah.
And when that doesn't happen, as has happened in the 21st century, people feel like their lives aren't better. They get mad. And so they want to know what the hell is going on.
Yeah.
And that movement is powering politics across Europe and the US.
100%. Listen, we will watch this one with interest, and we will speak. By the way, Ghislaine Maxwell moved to a lower security prison.
That's right.
Is that connected to the interview she did, or the evidence she gave?
You think it is.
Or is it just unfortunate timing?
No. This is definitely related to the process, you know, and so I don't know if they're softening her up, or I don't know if maybe the members of Congress don't want to go to the, the crappy harbcore prison. By the way, guys and girls prisons is a debate issue everywhere. I would just remind you, for the people who are angry about the reform hiccup you're having, don't forget, Kamala Harris said in a video interview that she wanted to use tax dollars to give free sex change operations to illegal aliens who were in prison.
That sounds right. There's like 3 steps of felonies going on there, right?
It's the second half of the joke that starts with Bill Clinton, Jeffrey Epstein, and Kevin Spacey get into a plane. And then I have to put them all together.
Absolutely. I love it. Listen, Michael, always a pleasure. Thank you, Michael Graham. He's our man in Washington, our voice on Capitol Hill, commentator and managing editor of Inside Sources. I do wonder with this whole... And the social media does, terrible work on this. But who's on the list? Like there is somewhere a file, and it's like a big bullet point list, just littered with names. And if you followed only the Epstein story for the last few years on social media, everybody is on the list. Everybody from Stephen Hawking to president to the everybody's on this flipping list. Oh, they're on the list. Nobody knows this, by the way, just sort of guessing. There was that time when Clinton is the main one on the list. Trump. Oh God, Trump was. Look, there's some photographs of Trump. He's a friend. Yeah, but he was on the list for a different reason. No, it's a different list. No, there is no list. We don't know. Look, a lot of powerful people, they like rubber, they love it. Tony Blair loves press in the flesh. There's nothing Tony Blair likes a weekend away with the Clintons, and they can shoot the breeze, talk about geopolitics, experience, and go over their time in office and enjoy some, £700 bottles of fine red. And he loves that. Throw in a bit of Bill Gates and a few other everyone that's at those dinner parties and barbecues is all worth several billions of pounds. That's how they kind of roll. They enjoy that. Their vanity, their vainglorious nature almost demands it. They're surrounded by, I'm not just the president or the prime minister. I look who I wine and dine with. Peter Mandelson loved all that nonsense, didn't he? He couldn't get enough of that caper. So never be surprised if you discover one of them's a wrong-un, that their list of associates includes some other very powerful people. It kind of goes, that bit should not be surprising to anyone. It doesn't mean that they were all doing the same thing. And I'm pretty sure even Epstein managed to take a day off from his, horrendous carnal interests from time to time. So, you have to kind of be careful how you digest this one, but it's going to be interesting to see the Clintons at the Oversight Committee in October. Boy, do I hope that's filmed live. 0344 499 1000.
Gender.
Marx's Box has apologised, but they haven't responded to any of the other things that have been coming up for absolutely years. For example, that they allow everybody to identify into whichever changing rooms they want. Women have been complaining about this directly. I have seen a letter that was written in 2017 about this, and the response was, we are inclusive, we are an inclusive retailer. I mean, this nonsense, we are excluding women who want to have a place to get changed in peace. So they've apologised on this, but they haven't actually answered questions about, do you have any male bra fitters who call themselves women?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This one from Stephen says, I'm a 68-year-old single dad with health issues and a 14-year-old son. My home and contents are up for sale so that we can emigrate. I will have to put 100,000 quid into a business in order to get a visa and only have a UK base rate state pension as income after a lifetime of work. But I don't see a future in the UK for my son. And that is another good point. If you're a parent and you've got young kids, as I have, and you look at the world we're in, not just from this whole financial mess, you look at AI and what that's doing to the workplace. And remember, in the AI calendar, if you look at what's happening, thousands of jobs just going, not being replaced, just disappearing to computerization. In AI terms, we're on week 1. Just think about that. Look at ChatGPT, all the other AI tools, Grok and whatever, Gemini, you name it. There's so many out there now, all doing incredible things, making legal decisions, goodness knows what else. This is week 1, the equivalent of week 1 of a journey that is about to change the face of how human beings exist, work, offer labour, recreation, our thinking, and everything that goes with it. There's no conspiracy theory here. This is actually happening. And if you look at it and what it's doing at the moment and what it can do, this is week one. Wow. So, yeah, if you've got a 14-year-old, I've got an 11-year-old, soon to be 12 or 11 and a half, he is, and one that literally has just turned 7 in the last few days. Yes, I think about that as well, Stephen. You know, what's it going to look like round here when they're 20? What's going to be around for them? What could you even specialise in? Let's go back to your calls. On a brighter note, let's talk tax. Simon's in Basingstoke. You're going to cheer us up, Simon. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian. No, I'm afraid I'm not. It's far, far worse than we realise.
Go on.
We owe the Bank of England £250 billion.
Is that all?
Yeah. Actually, it's 257 billion. We owe them for that. They did a deal with the government when they were buying government gilts that the government would cover any losses they make. So we owe them 257 billion rather. You and I paid 46 billion extra into the pensions for public sector workers, our massively efficient public sector. 75% of the civil servants in Whitehall have the title of manager.
That's amazing, that.
It's amazing. And what the other thing is, you know, the non-dom changes and driving out all the wealthy people. If you look at the one part of our economy that is still world-beating is the City of London. The City of London's all their services are built around providing services to wealthy people, everything from the legal services to the wealth management services. If they all leave the UK, what's the point of being based in the UK to do with that?
Well,
and as you mentioned with AI, those are the jobs that are going to go first.
Well, 100%. I mean, if you look at the civil service and jobs that could be done by AI, I mean, it's massive. By the way, just on the point of the Bank of England, Simon, I mean, the British government own the Bank of England. Why can we not just cancel the debt? I know that's always a schoolboy question, but I've never known the answer.
You know, that's what we should do, and that's what the Americans should do.
Yeah.
Because in the 5,000 years of interest rates, we have history going that far back, interest rates were never at 0% in 5,000 years.
Yeah.
But central banks kept them at that rate for almost 13 years. It was totally irresponsible. That's driven all the wealth inequality. So what they should do, what I would do is day one, tell the Bank of England, right, I want you to buy 80% of the UK debt.
Yeah.
And then once they've done it, turn around. I'm absolutely shocked you've done this. The Bank of England is bankrupt. You're all fired. And we start again. All that debt.
We start again. I like it. Simon, thank you. It's a great call. Simon in Basingstoke on tax. Massive $250 billion to the Bank of England. Very briefly, before we go into the news, the voice of doom, day 8. It's the mystery voice, but with a political vibe to it. Here's the question. Whose voice is this?
I certainly have things to say.
It's not Ian Duncan Smith. I have to keep saying that because it does sound a little bit like Ian Duncan Smith. Here it is again.
I certainly have things to say.
It's gone on for 8 days. Nobody so far has got the right answer. If you think you know it, 87222. Do not phone in because we haven't got any prizes. However, if you want to just take part, 87222. Here it is again.
I certainly have things to say.
Maybe we'll get a right answer today. I'll reveal all after the news, if we get a right answer. If not, it rolls over to tomorrow. Have another listen.
I certainly have things to say.
Who's that then? 87222. Lots to come in the next section. More of your calls on the way as well. We threw out that question, not even tongue-in-cheek. Are you willing to pay more tax to save the economy? Well, Rachel Reeve is absolutely stuffed. 50 billion quid's worth of debt. How is she going to get out of it, and what does she do? Lines are open. Let's first get the news headlines at 3 o'clock on Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yeah, 3 minutes after 3 o'clock. Welcome back to the home of Common Sense. We will continue to talk and explore the curious labyrinthine world of Rachel Reeves under massive pressure. Can she snake her way out of a 50 billion quid black hole? She's already on course to miss key targets and spending promises as the nation's finances plunge deeper into the red. Are you willing to pay a little more tax to help save the UK economy? That's ultimately what it's going to come down to, because there's no other money, only your money. Also, small boat migrants could dodge deportation to France under Prime Minister Keir Starmer's one-in, one-out returns deal by claiming, guess it, human rights protections, or saying they're under 18, for example, even though they're clearly 28 with a long beard. Nonetheless, anything to give it a go from the legal perspective. You can see it coming round the corner at 1,000 miles an hour. And Gary Lineker is returning to Saturday Night TV, fronting a new ITV game show called The Box, just 3 months after stepping back from the BBC over anti-Semitism accusations and more. We'll look at that story a little later as well. 0344 499 1000. Let's just do the voice of doom. This, of course, was the mystery voice. It's been going 8 days, this one. You're always looking for a politician, all right? That's the only real clue at this stage. This is the voice we've been playing for the last week or so.
I certainly have things to say.
Who is that? These are some of the guesses. Nicholas Ridley, John Knott, Rupert Lowe, Sir David Amos, Andrew Mitchell. None of those. Louis Mountbatten, no. Ben Habib, Reginald Maudling, Alan Clark, Enoch Powell. It's none of those. We haven't got a correct answer. It rolls over tomorrow to day 9. And this from Paula in Kent, who says, Reform are making a complete mess of this so-called policy. This is the trans women in jail policy. Thousands of women will be shaking their heads as it seems, yet again, biological women are always the ones having goalposts moved or our spaces up for discussion. This is a small percentage of people. That does not mean women have to be accepting. A separate facility needs to be sourced. Have Reform been living under a rock? NHS Fife have put trans rights above women's rights. Look at how well that's gone down with women. It is extraordinary. This should never be an argument that women have to defend. It should never be and yet again, every time voices, famous or otherwise, find themselves having to put their head and their vocal points above the parapet in order to defend something that should never need defending, and that is the very reasonable acknowledgement of a women-only space. Whether that's a refuge, whether that's a prison, whether it's a changing room, whatever it happens to be. That's how it works. Now let's move to this story. Small boat migrants could dodge deportation to France, as we've been discussing, by, of course, the human rights law. That old chestnut is likely to spring up as we discover the one-in, one-out policy begins. Well, I was about to say to take effect. It started technically yesterday. It hasn't stopped a couple of big old boats crammed full of people coming over since then from France. We've got France and other EU countries. We'll also have a veto on who gets returned, which slightly undermines Labour's plans to stop the crossings. It's worth reminding you, so far this year, just this year, a record 25,436 people have crossed the Channel, nearly 50% more than this time last year. Let's get a word from Lara Brown, commissioning editor over there at The Spectator. Lara, good afternoon to you.
Hi, thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. Nice to have you with us. I mean, this sort of comes under the category of we could have told you this, Keir.
Yeah, I mean, so the details of the France deal were published yesterday when it started. It is obviously not going to work. I initially thought it would have no impact. I think it might now make things worse, and it'll be very expensive to make it worse. So just to go through a couple of the top line problems with the deal. Yeah. The first is the UK is bearing the cost for this. So all transport for migrants are paid for by the UK. Bear in mind, we're already giving money to France to deal with the small boats. This is more money to France that won't make a difference. The biggest problem is that if you're a migrant that arrives in a small boat, you can't be removed if you have an outstanding asylum claim, which means that most migrants simply have to arrive here on a small boat, and then, as they already do, lodge an asylum claim. The average waiting time for your claim to be processed is currently 413 days. So that means for over a year, you can't be removed, you'll be living in a hotel, your costs will be paid for by the British taxpayer, it will contribute to the £4 million a day hotel bill that taxpayers are paying. And then once you get to the point of your claim, because we've done nothing about the ECHR, and because human rights law is so easy to manipulate by lawyers, 49% of asylum claims on just their first reading are successful. That's around half of people who arrive in a small boat are allowed to stay. Then, on appeal, an additional 48% of claims are effective. So it's very easy to get into the UK and stay in a way this deal won't touch at all. Additional things that are concerning, this deal seems to be really weighted towards France. So there's absolutely no data sharing at all by the French government with the UK, which means that we won't have information on who we are taking. They could be dangerous. There's no way to do a risk assessment. But France have a right to veto people. So if France are nervous about getting a migrant that could be from a country with a lot of terrorism activity, they can simply veto it and refuse. So we could have a situation where we're taking far more dangerous migrants in and sending migrants to France in very, very small numbers. Yvette Cooper will not talk about numbers who are much safer. So this is going to be expensive, it could make the situation more dangerous, and there's absolutely no way it will act as a deterrent.
Indeed, and as you rightly said, Lara, at the beginning, it could have the very opposite effect, because once the word gets out that this is a country that really has a zero policy, they don't have anything, certainly not an authentic one or a workable immigration policy, then that sort of increases the magnetism of the UK. You know, I can get there, not only am I going to get there and be given a hotel, I haven't really got to worry too much because they have no legal process to remove me.
Exactly. So a really alarming trend we've seen this summer, and bear in mind that small boats crossings are reaching a peak and there seem to be no sign of slowing down, is that people smugglers are advertising in specific groups. They've been running adverts on social media. And one of the things they say about the UK is that we have a really easy human rights system to get round because of the ECHR, because of our tribunal systems, because of how soft many judges are on cases. So they tell people on the shores of Calais, go to the UK, give me money for a small boat because you will almost definitely get to stay. Nothing is going to change because of this deal. In fact, this deal might publicise that fact.
And do you sense that, I mean, obviously Yvette Cooper and Keir Starmer are the chief recipients of the bad news, almost like when the employment figures come out on a monthly basis, there'll be the sort of migrant deportation figures that will land on the desk, and they're probably, you know, lucky to be in 2 digits in the first few months. How are they going to play this? Because there's going to be some demonstrable truths. If this fails in the way that many people are suspecting it will, and we are seeing that 3 months down the line, 4 people have been sent back to France, they're going to have to somehow justify that figure.
So let's look at Yvette Cooper's record here. She cancelled the Rwanda plan in Labour's first months in government. She called it a gimmick. And she, even though what Rwanda would have solved is the ECHR problem and the processing backlog, because you can process people in a third country. So she cancels that. And then she promises that she's got the answer to the small boats crisis. And it turns out, a year later, the answer is this farcical one-in, one-out policy. Yeah. She has refused on any media to discuss what the numbers they're going for are, but it seems that we're looking at about 50 people. So if those are published, and if there's transparency about this scheme, which we need to make sure there is, I think Yvette Cooper's position could become completely untenable. Small boats are one of the most important issues to the public. They want to see this fixed. And we're ridiculing the public Labour's ridiculing the public by claiming that this is in any way a solution to the problem and will make any difference.
Yeah, and that's a very grim point to finish on, but it looks like the reality that's looming across the horizon. Lara, thank you for your time. Really appreciate your comments. Lara Brown is commissioning editor at The Spectator, just really running through the nuts and bolts, the ineptitude of this policy. I mean, it's ridiculous at every single level, when we all know that if you are serious and robust and really mean it from your heart, because you want to protect Brits, and when I say protect, I'm thinking primarily economically protect our base, our way of life, our systems, then you would find a way to not make the United Kingdom the attractive magnet that it currently is. And I'll say it again, it's the only thing that Emmanuel Macron's ever got right when he said, yeah, it's a magnet out there. You've got to make it less attractive. I mean, it's an absolute joke that you genuinely... It used to be a bit of an urban myth, didn't it? When people would go, you get given a luxury hotel, and somebody would go, no, don't get given a luxury hotel. It's like some, horrendous B&B that holds 30 people, and it's not very much, even if you're paying for it. So, this. Well, we now know that's not the case, because they sort of run out of the 2-star hotels. So you're staying in the sort of Millennium Hotel or the Britannia Hotel, whatever it is, then you're staying in a pretty tasty place. Now, I know that's not the only measure. Not every migrant will be staying in a similar hotel. That's not the point, is it? It's the fact that anyone is staying in those hotels at taxpayers' expense. Let's look at some comments from you on a whole range of things. John in Gravesend says, Ian, you are taking Vanessa Frake's words out of context. Whilst the policy is no men in women's prisons, each case will be assessed individually. So it's not let them all in, but maybe only 1% of trans will be allowed in women's prisons. She's not brought in as an expert, she's been brought in as an expert, so why not listen to her? Look at the amateurs in government. No one ever thought it was everybody, any trans woman. That was never said, not by me. It's the 1%. that is the problem. It is literally, I think, John, inadvertently, you've actually highlighted what is still the problem. Anne Widdecombe was with us yesterday, who also a spokesperson for reform. She said the same thing. She said, no, it's not all trans people. There's just, there might be 1%. That's still unacceptable. That's the point that has put reform into this kind of slight curious dichotomy. But we will watch with interest and see how it pans out. Kevin in Stafford says, maybe to satisfy everybody, we do this. Women's prison for women, men's prison for men, and a transgender prison for all transgender folk. Yeah, I don't know how that would work out financially. Lou in Sevenoaks says, I think women's spaces are extremely important, as I am a woman myself. The transgender have done so much harm to what I consider as humans that actually are trapped in the wrong body and have had the full sex change. I do believe reform are referring to cases like these. As an example, Lady Campbell, who was born with both sexes and wrongly assigned at birth to be a man. Later in life, she transgendered. She is a prime public figure, example of how reform would judge case by case on who would or wouldn't be allowed into a female prison. Caroline Cozy from the James Bond film For Your Eyes Only, also transgender, had a full sex change. If you look at both of these women, you would then understand these are cases that must be considered, and it's not always black and white. That's exactly what Anne Widdecombe said to us yesterday. If somebody literally looks, to all intents and purposes, like a woman, and they have manufactured, but nonetheless they no longer have a penis, they have women's, visually speaking, that they look like a woman with breasts and a vagina and all that goes with. I get that, but that still doesn't address fully the problem. And you'd also have to ask yourself, well, is that going to be a common issue? The people who look like that? Is it based on looks? The area of campaign against this will stand firm and say, no, you should still not be in a woman's prison. Colin's in Basildon. On the migrant crossings, Colin, what have you got for us? Afternoon to you.
Afternoon. What a mess, eh?
Just a bit. What are you thinking?
Oh God, what a mess. He's under siege, and I mean, I know everybody moans about it, everybody talks about it, but oh God. Why don't they're treating this as a business, these gangs, bringing these people over here.
Yeah.
It's a business. Why don't we get a marine force, even if we have to go to Belgium, put it out to tender? Yep. Private marine forces. Like private security, just to stop these as they get to the France 12-mile limit.
Sure.
So once they're in international waters, whatever means, they turn them back or stop them physically.
Well, the argument is always, the argument is always you can't do anything in the water. That seems to be you will have heard it as well, Colin. You know, that's always what's said. You can't do anything in the water, whether you're the French Navy or the British Navy or the Border Force, whatever. You can't do any turning back when in the water. I don't know. I mean, that seems to me. I'm not quite sure. I'm not sure I quite believe that, to be honest. But they do rescue people in the water. So if they can put people on the Border Force boat, why can't the Border Force boat turn around and go back to France?
Well, Nigel Farage, I mean, that's his plan to turn them back. I mean, how's that going to work then?
Yeah.
I mean, I've got all the respect in the world for him. He's a hero of our times, but, you know, what's to be done about this?
What is to be done?
Once they get here, they've got the 66% chance of staying. And that's, I mean, that's not bad odds.
That's not bad odds at all. And even if you don't get the final green light to stay, I mean, you might have 3 or 4 years of, living here, having a bit of experience, a bit like backpacking for free, right? I mean, you still get 4 years. So it's such a curious situation, and we hear it every day, and we talk about it so often. The danger is it just becomes an acceptable part of life. In any other world, Colin, as I'm sure you know, 1,000 people a week coming into a country without any documentation would be front page of the news, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't even get talked about now.
No, because Starmer plays it down. He plays it down.
Indeed.
He knows he's finished.
Well,
he just plays it down, doesn't he?
He's hoping for another 3 years, but don't hold your breath, Keir. We'll see. Colin, thank you very much indeed. Colin in Basildon. Paul in Belfast on taxation. Of course, I wouldn't pay a penny more in tax just for Labour to waste it. Give it to migrants, give it to Mauritius, give it to undeserving young doctors and civil servants and train drivers. Absolutely not, says Paul in Belfast. Thank you to him. We'll be back with more comment from you coming next on Talk.
Marks & Sparks has apologised, but they haven't responded to any of the other things that have been coming up for absolutely years. For example, that they allow everybody to identify into whichever changing rooms they want. Women have been complaining about this directly. I have seen a letter that was written in 2017 about this, and the response was, we are inclusive, we are an inclusive retailer. I mean, this nonsense, we are excluding women who want to have a place to get changed in peace. So they've apologised on this, but they haven't actually answered questions about, do you have any male bra fitters who call themselves women?
the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Gary says Vanessa Frake is an advisor to reform, and as such, she does not make policy. Advisors are people you listen to. You do not automatically take any or all of their advice. A sensible politician has a wide range of advisors and cherry picks what they perceive to be the good bits of advice from each to formulate policy. Her advice is to look at every trans individual on a case-by-case basis. Sounds eminently sensible. For example, Ian, do you think it's best placed to lock up a fully transitioned, frail 70-year-old who's been sentenced to prison time, perhaps for protesting in the wrong place at the wrong time? What Gary says there makes sense, but advisors don't generally get wheeled out in front of the press to say what they say if it's massively at odds with what had been said before from the party. Look, I don't think this is a deal breaker. I don't think this is going to change anyone thinking, well, I was going to vote reform, but I'm not now because a woman who's an advisor has said something. And it's just of interest in that it was a bit of a kind of own goal, because it's not very reformy to allow that. And you'd have thought they might have had, and Gary is quite right, they might have had the conversation beforehand and talked about it. Because every government knows there is a truth in what Gary and a few others have said about different people who, you know, Lady Colin Campbell where would she be if she ended up in Clink for... I mean, that's a slightly different story in terms of transitioning, but I guess it would come under a sort of a category in a similar way. Let's talk to Gary in Sevenoaks. How are you doing, Gary?
Hello, Ian. Hope you're well.
Very well, thank you. Yeah, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's to do with, am I willing to pay more tax?
Yeah. I mean, you're in Sevenoaks, for God's sake. You know, it's God's own town.
I know. Well, actually, it was going to be part of what I've got to say, because to sort of illustrate what I mean by not wanting to pay more tax by the value we get from it now.
Yeah.
Anyway, imagine if you got off at Sevenoaks this evening and you looked on the floor and there was a £50 note on the floor, and you looked each way and you thought, well, no one's looking, I'll have that. And you'd go home via the off-licence night, you'd get yourself a bottle of Blue Nun and, and celebrate with the wife a little bit or whatever. Because £50 note is still an article of quite considerable value, or at least it is in my household.
Certainly.
So imagine a stack of those, 100 high, with one of those neat little paper bands round it.
Nice.
Yes, nice. That's a wad of £5,000.
Do you ever have that thought, by the way, sorry to interject, Gary, about finding a bundle of cash somewhere?
Yes. You know, some drug dealers dropped it, you know. And
I just, wow, what's that in the bush there by the bus stop? Oh, my God, look, it's exactly. 10 grand in 50s.
Well, you've almost hit exactly about what I was going to say. So if you filled a suitcase full of these wads of £50 notes, £5,000 in each wad.
Yeah.
For my calculation, average sort of size suitcase, you get about 2 million quid's worth in there.
Yeah, you would.
So imagine flicking that your suitcase open when you got home from your holiday, and boom, there was that in front of you. And some drug dealer's got a straw donkey and 200 ciggies and your dirty washing, and he's very annoyed. And you've got this. Now that 737 that's just brought you back from Magaluf can fit about 170 suitcases in its hold. Imagine 170 suitcases, all stuffed with £50 notes in bundles like that, and you've got about 350 million quid there.
Wow.
Now that's still only a third of $1 billion. So you'd need 3 airliners stuffed full with suitcases, stuffed full of £50 notes to make $1 billion. Now, Stephen Wolf comes on your show often, tells us the price of immigration costing us, illegal immigration, $8 billion a year or something. I think that was his last figure. It might have been 11. So that would be 24 aeroplanes stuffed full of money. And you think, I'm not going to pay any more tax. All the time, that amount of money is going out on just something like that. It's not stopping the boats on illegal immigration. Now, if you went down to Sevenoaks sort of parish hall where some councillors need some money and you just took one of those suitcases along with you, you flipped open the lid and say, right, Mr. Jones, he runs the daycare minibus that brings people to the coffee morning and then to the senior citizens and that. Your minibus is knackered, isn't it? Here's a couple of wads of money, go and sort that out.
Yep.
Oh, you run the allotments for all the special needs kids, the Grow community thing, you need tools, right, have a bundle of money to sort that out. You think where all that money would how much good you could do.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
That money, if you were just
I'd love
handing
to
it
do
out like
that.
at least it would go to good causes
Yeah.
rather than. And so when David Lammy takes another trip and he comes back and he's given £1 billion away for some cause, some green energy project overseas. It's just given away. They talk about billions just as 1, 2 doesn't sound a very big number, but when you look at it in Reddy's, my example there, you can
it's a fabulous analogy. The strange irony of what you said is that the last time I saw a £50 note was at Sevenoaks Station, bizarrely, Gary. And it was my own £50 note, because I'd nipped to Tesco, to the cash machine, which I hardly ever do, and took out some money, and it gave me a £50 note. And I thought, that's unusual. £50, you don't often get that out of a cash machine. And I went to buy, so I thought, I'm going to buy my ticket with cash, which again, I don't think I'd ever done that. And I went to the kiosk, there's 3 of those windows there at Sevenoaks Station, and I handed over my 50, and that's when the standoff began, Gary, because the guy looked at me. I was waiting for the good, the bad and the ugly music to kick in. There was a moment when he looked at me like, who is this guy? What is this he's giving me? And he held it up to the light and he stuck it under a machine and he spoke to a colleague as well. And there it was. But yeah, it was literally my own rather than finding it on the floor. But that's a great image you've created.
If you dropped it, wouldn't you? And lost
yes, I mean it would have been. It would have brought to life your analogy in real. Step one. Somebody else would have found the £50. Maybe it could have been you, Gary.
I often think about people sitting on my train carriage and how much tax they're contributing, and you think all of the tax that you've contributed, everyone on this train, if you added that up, and how much that would come to, you all think you're, getting rid of, paying that tax for good causes, yet it can just go out the window like that.
It's a brilliant point when you simplify in an advised way, as you have, the amounts of money that's involved and what you could do with that amount of money. I mean, it's mind-blowing. I mean, really mind-blowing.
Yep, it is. That's all I had to say, just to try and make that...
Listen, I love it. Gary, it's brilliant. Thank you very much indeed for that. Gary in Sevenoaks, all of those suitcases stuffed full of 50s. And what you could do with that amount of money, that's the kind of cash we are spending just in this one area of life. Norman is in Dartford, just up the road from Sevenoaks, really, Norman. Have you ever found a 50 at Dartford Station?
Are you having a laugh here? Hey, you taking a mickey, son?
You never know. You never know.
Yourself.
It's amazing what you find in Dartford.
Yeah, it certainly is, but it ain't £50 notes, mate.
Yeah, true enough.
But
what have you got for us, Norm?
But Starmer,
yeah,
he has no intention whatsoever of stopping these boats. It's just look at his track record. Human rights lawyer.
Fair point.
He signed a letter to object to a plane full of criminals going to Jamaica.
Yeah.
Look who he's promoted. Or he's got Yvette Cooper. Remember her standing there, all refugees welcome, with a little poster?
Oh, yes. She was very happy with that. And I think she still believes that as well.
Oh, of course she does. And you've got Lord Hermer, what is it, Attorney General. Another
Harmless
human
Hermer.
rights lawyer. I mean, he's never done this country many favours.
Oh, he's in another stratosphere of bonkers thinking, this fella.
Well, he is. But anyone who seriously thinks that he's going to stop the birds, I'm saying they need to go home, go to bed and call the nurse.
Yep.
Because he has no intention whatsoever of doing it. And whatever he says on the television, well, you've got a 95% chance he's lying. His lips are moving.
His lips are moving.
And that's what I think of him, without a question.
Yeah.
So it will never happen. It might happen till in another 3 or 4 years if he's out of office.
But it's not going to happen under his watch, right?
Well, I was banking on Nigel, but I think he's dropped a clanger with this prison governor business.
I mean, that might be a blip rather than a irreversible kind of cataclysmic disaster. Is that too generous?
Well, yeah, I suppose I'm not that generous, but I can't believe he's even fallen for anything like it unless he didn't know she was going to say it.
Yeah, well,
but
you
I
know,
think I've heard her say it before, though.
Yeah, we've had her on many times. She's almost our go-to prison voice when we talk about, you know, what's going on in prison, because she was yeah, probably she was a tough old governor and knew the stretch well, you know. But I think, you know, she was, in fairness, she wasn't saying every trans woman should go to a woman's prison. She was saying there are nuances, which Anne Widdecombe said. But that's not... My point is that's never going to satisfy the argument that, sorry, this is a female-only space, and we'll be back there. Listen, Norman, you're always great. Thank you very much indeed. 0344 499 1000 is where you'll find us. It's just gone 3:30. This one from Andy says, is that mystery voice Ben Wallace? It is not. It's a nice guess, though. I kind of miss Ben Wallace, former Defence Secretary. Andy's enjoying the show. Thank you, Andy, for that. You've got to go back a lot further than Ben Wallace. A lot further. Lines are open. We'll be talking to you some more in a few moments' time. And what is happening with Gary Lineker? He's back on the box with a big old quiz show. We'll find out more right here on Talk next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
25 to 4, more comment on the way. We've got some great messages as well. We'll come to those too. I want to bring you this story as well, which we mentioned a few moments ago, that Gary Lineker, is returning to Saturday Night TV. No, he's not been brought back for Match of the Day. This is a new TV show on ITV. It's a game show, and it comes, of course, just months after he legged it, departed company from the BBC. His comeback followed those accusations of anti-Semitism, which saw him step back from those duties earlier this year. And also, as Culture Secretary Lisa Nandy says she won't watch the new MasterChef series even. Calling the conduct of sacked host Greg Wallace and John Torode absolutely appalling. This is very disgusted, says Lisa. Let's speak with Felicity Cross, Deputy TV Editor at The Sun. Felicity, good afternoon.
Hey there, Ian. How are you? Will you be watching MasterChef tonight?
Well, I didn't. It's already on iPlayer, isn't it? So I thought on the train home, I'm going to have a little look at it because I want to see how they've edited this thing, just to see. I'm assuming that they've tried to, and it's almost impossible to minimise the amount of FaceTime that you see the two hosts in favour of maybe voices rather than faces? I don't know. You've probably seen it. What have they done?
Yes. Well, I don't want to spoil it for anyone that's so excited to watch, but they've certainly tried to do their best, but they were sort of ever present, weren't they? Jogging
Yes.
and they were everywhere. But what is noticeable is there's a lot less banter. So certainly with the contestants, there's a lot less of that sort of off-the-cuff jibes and gags and that kind of thing, which is obviously where they got themselves into trouble before. So potentially that's the difference we're going to see this series.
So you've done something that Lisa Nandy won't do, and that's you've watched it.
Well, do you know, I've never really liked MasterChef as a viewer. Dare I admit that?
I've never liked Lisa Nandy. So, yeah, between the two of us, we've got this covered.
I know. So, I mean, yeah, she sat on the fence, didn't she? And she said that it's not for her as the government or, you know, as a member of the government to tell broadcasters what they can and can't broadcast. But she said, didn't she, as a viewer, I won't be watching. I mean, and certainly this really did kick up a stink when the BBC said that they were going to press ahead and air this series, which was the last that Greg and John filmed before, obviously, all the allegations about Greg came out. Even one of the contestants came out and said that they'd asked the BBC not to air it, which I think was a real step change in what we'd been hearing, because most of the contestants want it out there because, you know, it could change their life if they were spotted deaf, and, you know, it could help their business. So for someone to come out and say don't air it was a real line in the sand, really. But anyway, it's up on iPlayer. The BBC have proudly put it in the category of new and trending. So
wow.
They're backing that horse, aren't they?
I'm with you, though, on one thing, Felicity. I've never really been a MasterChef fan. It's one of those things, you know, when you're sitting there on the sofa and you flick over the channels and it's on, you might stay with it for 5 minutes and, you know, check out what their pasty looks like or whatever. And then, you know, you turn over and watch something else, stick Netflix on or whatever. But it's clearly been massive, and, you know, to lose one host is sometimes seen as a bit unfortunate. To lose two, almost, I mean, it looked for so long that Tyrone was as safe as houses and he was going to get a new co-host, because Greg Wallace, although he hasn't done anything, it appears that, you know, crosses the the law of the land, he was a bit Jim Davidson, a bit 1970s, and that was seen as surplus to requirements and a bit too, this is one of the allegations, a bit too huggy. But he hasn't done anything legally wrong, but clearly they didn't want him anymore.
Yeah, and I think that he said when he did a brilliant sit-down chat with Clemmy Moody, our assistant editor, that he said, you know, they hired a greengrocer. They wanted that kind of market stall banter, and now apparently they don't want that. So,
whereas Tyrone, I mean, I feel desperately sorry for. Not that anyone is going to support if he did utter the word he was meant to have uttered, but, you know, apparently he was quoting a song lyric in doing so, which is a slightly different context to somebody standing out in the street shouting it out.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think that he has even said that he can't remember even saying this song. So I think that the jury's still out on him to a certain extent, and that's probably why we've not heard a lot from him himself. Greg has been very keen to speak up and, you know, not necessarily clear his name, but give his version of events. But John seems to be biding his time slightly, and I wonder whether that's because he's hoping that an official report into everything, you know, sheds a bit more light on what happened and what went on.
Let's talk about Gary Lineker. So he's back. This happened rather swiftly, didn't it? It's not only he's back, but it's they're obviously already in the making of this thing.
Absolutely. What a smooth move from Gary, and do we expect any less from him?
Sure.
So 3 months after he was forced out of the BBC, he's obviously inked a mega deal with the ITV, switched channels. What an absolute kick in the teeth for the BBC. But I think it sounds like a brilliant new entertainment show. So it's called The Box. I'm not sure if you've heard of it, but it's a huge hit in Norway.
Yeah, I heard it was a Norwegian format, but it did sound a bit, much to my annoyance, it sounded quite intriguing, actually. Tell us a bit more.
A fifth of the population in Norway have watched it. So, I mean, Norway not got a huge population.
That's only 26 people, though.
Yeah, I was going to say, you stole my joke.
Sorry.
Yeah, so 12 celebrities are put in boxes, sort of plonked down in the middle of nowhere in boxes, and they're given challenges to leave the box, battle their way out, and then in the environment in which they're plonked, they then have to take on challenges. So sort of a mix between I'm a Celebrity, SES Who Dares Wins, that kind of thing. So a really big Saturday night number. We're hearing that ITV think it will replace Saturday Night Takeaway, which obviously has been rested for the time being, that really popular one from Ant and Dec. But I just think it's such a great idea for Gary to do this, because it completely takes him out of that football arena. We're not going to have all those headlines comparing him to the new Match of the Day team. He's just, firmly setting himself in that primetime space. Huge payday for it, and probably a pretty easy gig. Fly off to some exotic place.
Yeah.
A couple of episodes of filming this autumn. Happy days.
You see, my problem with it isn't so much that it's specifically Gary Lineker. It's the same problem I had when, was it Freddie Flintoff that was presenting Bullseye when that was rebooted and came back? And I thought, if I was a comedian or a kind of, light entertainment person, I'd be a bit miffed by that, because these are areas that once upon a time was only ever the domain of, Jimmy Tarbuck back in the day. Who's the other one? Jim Davidson, I suppose, back in the day. It was, these were kind of entertainers, and that's why they were good at doing quiz formats, because it required that very specific talent to do it. Now you've got a bloke that played for Spurs and another one who used to play cricket.
Yeah, and has he got the gags? Has he got the humour to react off the cuff? I don't think so, but he's got a nice face.
He's got good hair. I always think that about Lineker. I always think, okay, he's got good. I'll give him that. He's got good hair. He scrubs up rather well. He just had a very interesting set of views outside of his remit as a BBC presenter. But of course, being on ITV, that controversy goes away somewhat, doesn't it?
Exactly, and they'd been sniffing around Gary for years and years, trying to get Gary for them. So they're very confident that the BBC's loss is their gain. So we'll see how it pans out.
I mean, that's the funny thing, isn't it? There's a sort of real danger when something gathers momentum, and in this case, Gary Lineker. He's very well known. He does, he can do TV very well. There's very few sports people that can. Make that transition into broadcasting. Obviously, our colleagues at talkSPORT, we see it all the time, where you get the real creme de la creme of people who can cross over from being sports people into broadcasting, but very few can do it. So I don't dispute that he can do that, but in terms of whether he's box office, that's an interesting one, isn't it? I mean, he's been presenting a late night football show on the telly. But is he box office? Or do we just think he is because he's always sort of there in the news?
I think that, and certainly, he sat in that studio, and what a perfect training ground. He's dealt with scandals and drama and all that kind of thing. And, they obviously think he can do it. He's got the talent, they assume, and certainly he's got the Instagram followers and the online following.
Yeah.
And they love that kind of thing. And he's a bit of a housewife's favourite, isn't he? So certainly in terms of a family show, he seems like the kind of person to stick at the front of that. But
if he doesn't work, we can stick him in the box, I suppose, can't we?
Yeah, I mean, have you not had a call yet to be one of the celebs in the boxes?
Absolutely disgusted that the phone. I've got the phone here right in my hand at the moment. I'm ready and waiting, Felicity. I was hoping that this interview would be the moment where they'd say, "You've got box 7. Get over to Antigua. We start filming in 2 weeks."
Perfect. Well, so long as it's nicely stocked with some beers and some sun cream, you'll be fine.
That's all I need. Listen, great to have you on as ever. Felicity, thank you for your time. Felicity Cross, Deputy TV Editor over there at The Sun. Lineker's a funny one, isn't he? Before all of this broke, people were only divided about Lineker based on really, whether you were sort of a Spurs or a Leicester City fan or an England fan. Nobody doubted his, ability on the pitch. And, when he first started broadcasting, nothing like this was being talked about. It was Gary Lineker. You either said, oh, he's a great guy. I was talking to a friend about, not Des Lynam, who was the other one? Steve... Oh, his name has gone. Another one of those silky smooth grandstand presenters. Again, you know, you watch these things, and these people often had ultra trustworthiness, and that's sometimes in certain formats, in news and current affairs and in sports presentation. You need to be that trustworthy voice who knows the field. So when Lineker spoke about football and whether he's sitting there with Alan Shearer, who was a regular, Ian Wright, whoever it happens to be, you know you're listening to experts. I'm fascinated by that. They could be talking about horse racing or dominoes. If experts start talking among themselves, it's genuinely quite magnetic to watch. See, nobody disputed that about Lineker, but it was the social media stuff that kind of changed that whole thing. But then again, as I always seem to say, is it just us lot, as in you listening to this and me talking about it, that have problems with that? Does the rest of the nation go, I love Gary Lineker, he's really nice, isn't he? He's good, he's nice, he's not bad looking either, you know, he'll be great. Maybe it's only us lot that have big, sometimes slightly unreasonable views. I don't know. 0344 499 Steve Ryder, that's the name I was trying to think of. Our lines are open. This is Talk.
You know what an AA does? An AA is the top assistant who expedites, because I've been AA to people.
Okay, I accept all of that.
Epstein stuff. I'm
not questioning any of that. I'm not necessarily saying it's not true. What I'm asking you is, don't the Clintons have questions to answer on this?
Doesn't Donald Trump have questions? And this is deflection of the president.
Well, you're deflecting because you're not answering my question, Robert. Don't the Clintons have questions to answer here?
Are you shocked that Bill Clinton was a bad boy?
I mean, it's different being a bad boy.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is indeed Talk. Interesting. Steve Ryder, says Martin. I did get it in the end. Come on, Ian, up your game, son, says Martin in Whitley Bay. The reason I mentioned it is a friend of mine had just interviewed Steve Ryder, so it was on my head, in my brain, but escaped at the last minute. that was him. Brad says, I don't care where Lineker is. He will always be a smug, overpaid, opinionated plank. I can't stand him, says Brad. Martin says, although there are some people who've come out in favour of him here. Martin says, game show legends Leslie Crowther, Bob Monkhouse, the much maligned Michael Barrymore. Lineker has no place in this superstar company. Also from Martin. Yeah, that was that kind of the criteria for presenting a sort of game show format. Like Ant and Dec are brilliant at it because their personalities and obviously the partnership between the two of them is it just works brilliantly. I know there's probably some people who don't like Ant and Dec, but I think you take the point. We've kind of lost that a little bit. This one from Ian, who says the hiring of Gary Lineker proves they believe what Gary Lineker has always said, that he is not anti-Semitic. It also proves that he is a highly popular, skilled and trusted communicator. He would be much better than Ant and Dec, who were boring with their scripted gags. You see, I find that, and thank you, Ian, for that, I find that fascinating that Ant and Dec do that for a living. Gary Lineker doesn't do it for a living, but there is a perception, and Ian won't be alone, that Gary Lineker will be better than Ant and Dec, that's an utterly bizarre thing. You might prefer him, you might not like Ant and Dec, it's not legally, but that to me is a bit like saying I'd make a better heart surgeon than Smithy over there. I could do that. But I guess you just change the way you do the job, don't you? Because I don't dispute Gary Lineker can broadcast. I just don't know whether he's a light entertainer, but maybe that's not needed anymore. If you look at like Traitors and things like that, Claudia Winkleman presents that. Alan Cumming does it. Is Alan Cumming does the American version of it? And there's a few others sort of in a similar category. Rob Brydon's doing a quiz show, which has kind of got that sort of outdoor sort of tension vibe going onto it, and I can see Brydon very much in comfortable shoes in that sort of format. But then again, his backstory is kind of comedy in terms of his writing and performing. Simon is in Derby. We're almost doing a TV show here. Simon, what have you got for us? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ian. How are you? Hope you're well.
Yeah, good, thank you. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, there's a question that you may be able to answer for me. What's your age demographic? People listening to your station, which I think is wonderful, by the way.
It's very, very broad. But I couldn't tell you, and that sounds terrible, I couldn't tell you. I don't mean I'm not allowed to tell you. I don't specifically know. My guess would be probably 30 to 50 on average.
Okay. I just wondered, it was because every time you
30 to 60, I think.
You get, yeah, I'm 66, but I mean, I can't remember when I started listening to you. I think it was probably just about pre-COVID, and I've not stopped listening since.
That's good to know.
I sort of worry a bit because every time you and your colleagues come on, we seem to be discussing and rehashing the same sort of stuff, pack drill, every time, and it's worrying because nothing is getting sorted.
Yes.
And with all the unrest and unease in the atmosphere at the moment, which is palpable, and I think is worrying also because this government have lost so much control that whatever they do just seems to inch us further and further towards something horrible. And we don't have the police to control it, I don't think. We need a complete clear. I mean, we need to, like they did or trying to do in the States, just drain the swamp, because Nigel Farage, bless him, he's going to try and do whatever he can do. And I don't think he'd be able to do it because I think Whitehall is full of lefties, and every corner he turns, he's going to get blocked. And I actually did ask them the question. I'm waiting for a reply, which they usually are very good at replying, to say, okay, what is your manifesto going to do about all this silly nonsense with DEI and all this stuff, but how are you going to do it if you get blocked at every corner? And that's what worries me.
Yeah. It's a very good point. And you're right. We digest this stuff and we chat and get annoyed and angry and animated and all understandably so. But nothing ever changes, does it? You wonder who... Which is why I often throw up that question, Simon. Is it just us lot that think this and we're a tiny minority and everybody else is OK with it all?
Well, that's why I asked you the age demographic, because I wondered if it was just linked to the fact that there's certain people of an age group that do care, and a lot of the people of a certain age who don't give a tinker's cuss.
Well, that's very true. I love the phrase tinker's cuss, by the way. It doesn't get said very often enough, frankly. So house points on that one. But you're right. You're right. I mean, to be honest, if you look at the wider polling of how people intend to vote at the next election, there clearly are lots of people that do support general radical change, and all the polling also suggests that whilst we always think people in their 20s are very much liberal, Labour-y, Corbynite kind of characters. That's definitely not exclusively the case now.
Well, that's good to hear.
Yeah, I think so. It is good to hear. Simon, great call. Thank you very much indeed for that. Really appreciate it. Ray says, Ian, this box game show that Gary Lineker is going to be presenting was a big part of the second series of Episodes, which was a BBC series. I thought I was the only person that watched. I really liked Episodes. Stephen Mang and Matt LeBlanc were in it. I thought it was really well made and rather entertaining. But did I see the second series? Maybe I did. Maybe I saw a bit of it. So they featured the box in the second series. This is Gary Lineker's new métier. He's going to be a quiz show presenter. Has he already done some? This is a good example of people who shouldn't present quiz or game shows or that format. Gordon Ramsay did one, didn't he, for the BBC? I think, and it was awful. And I just thought, why would a multi-millionaire chef want to do a daytime quiz show? But what? Peter Cardwell knows the answer to this.
That's number one.
That's number one.
That's number
yes.
one.
It was called Bank Balance.
Right.
And it had a sort of convoluted set, and it's like, why is a celebrity chef doing this?
Do you remember Shafted with Robert Kilroy Silk? Do you want to share or shaft? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I forgot all about that.
Iconic.
Well done.
Yeah.
Well done. If you look at, because I was off for a couple of days, I couldn't believe how many quiz shows and who presents them are on daytime telly now.
Oh yes.
They're all over the place. Like ITV is just back to back.
Yeah, it'd be great. People love them. People love quiz shows.
But it's what America was some years ago. You know, that was what they do in the daytime, because you don't put the big shows on in the day, put them on at night. You know, when people sit round. That's all changing a bit. But yes, literally wall to wall quiz shows now.
Yeah.
Share or shaft?
Share or shaft? Asked Robert Kilroy Silk.
Do you remember the name of the political party he started?
Vanitas was his nickname, but his name was Veritas for
Veritas.
But it was known as Vanitas.
What's Kilroy Silk doing now?
Well, he's pretty old, so he's probably just retired, but he was one of the many people who fell out with Nigel Farage.
He didn't he?
Yeah.
Permatan Robert Kilroy
Patrick
Silk.
McGuire is, at the Times, is an expert on Robert Kilroy Silk, and there was actually a beautiful moment where, well, some might say beautiful, where someone threw manure at Robert Kilroy Silk, and someone said it was the first instance of the something hitting the tan.